American Comics, opening sign in Accelerator. Chapter 76. The most dazzling heroine, Clarice. But Tony was different. What he saw was that everyone in the Avengers died, and he was the only one who survived to face the fear of the unknown. In other words, although Tony is the most sincere and vicious one in the Avengers, he is also the one who cares about everyone the most. Such a person deserves to be friends with. A banquet invited by Tony Stark. Polaris looked at him in surprise. That's right. Levi's nodded. That Playboy's banquet will definitely not invite serious people. I'm not talking about you again. I'm saying that you won't go, right? Shadowcat on the side seemed to know something about Tony Stark, and didn't care about the dude. No, I've already agreed. He shrugged. He knew who Tony was better than Shadowcat in them. I think you must lack a dance partner. Seeing his firm attitude, Shadowcat was not insisting, but was ready to be his dance partner. Polaris and Little Naughty were dumbfounded when they heard it. I think 490 means that I can also be a dance partner. Polaris folded his arms around his chest, exuding a queen-like aura, trying to get them to give up voluntarily. But no one was fooled. I think Lorna, you are the least qualified to say such a thing. The Little Naughty stared at her, as if talking about the last time she went out with alone. Levi's, who was beside him, shrugged helplessly when he saw several people arguing. In fact, Tony told him in a low voice just now that it's better not to bring a dance partner, and his purpose is self-evident. Seeing that they were still arguing, he moved in a space and quietly disappeared beside them. Hey, stop arguing. Is gone. Clarice never joined the quarrel, because she was not good at arguing. But she kept staring at Levi's, and seeing that he had left, reminded everyone. Hearing his words, several people immediately looked at each other. The next evening, Levi's ready to go to Tony's party. Since Polaris and Naughty were constantly arguing about who should be his dance partner, he avoided a few people throughout the day. Before leaving, he thought about it and decided that it would be better to bring a dance partner. After all, he didn't like those women at the dance. And maybe most of them have something to do with Tony. Bring your own dance partner and you won't be so embarrassed at the dance. But who to take with you is the question. Levi's used the space to move and came to the girls' dormitory in an instant. I just wanted to see if everyone was there. But he didn't expect to see Clarice alone in the room, and gestured with a red evening dress. I think you'd look good in that one. The sudden voice behind her startled Clarice, but she turned around in surprise when she saw the figure in the mirror. Why are you here, Vice? Well, I just happened to be short of a dance partner. Levi's rubbed his chin and smiled. Hearing this, Clarice suddenly looked surprised. What is your suit? Levi's looked curiously at the evening dress in her hand. Oh, I bought this with Lorna and the others today because they said they might be going to a dance. 33 Clarice explained. Very good. Quickly change it and show me. That. What's wrong? Levi's asked suspiciously. Do you want me to change here? Clarice asked a little embarrassedly. He looked around and found that there didn't seem to be any other locker rooms in the room. Well, I'll wait for you outside. After speaking, he directly used the space to move to the outside of the room. Seeing him leave in a hurry, Clarice couldn't help but smile, and then looked at the red evening dress in her hand with a bright smile. After a while, the door to the room was opened, and Clarice came out in a red evening dress. Levi's eyes lit up when he saw Clarice in front of him. The well-dressed Clarice was simply too beautiful. Her long purple hair was combed into a princess hairstyle, and her pale green pupils gave her an exotic look. Finally, with this red evening dress, it is simply bubbling beautiful. However, what is slightly lacking is that there are too few decorations on her body. How is it? Clarice asked uncomfortably, seeing him staring at her tightly. Yeah, very pretty, but Levi's nodded, rubbing his chin. But there's still something missing. Don't move yet. Levi's put his hands on Clarice's shoulders to keep her still, and Clarice looked at him very obediently. Immediately afterwards, his right hand tapped on top of Clarice's head, and the next moment, a golden princess hair crown studded with diamonds was placed on top of her head. Looking at the princess crown, Levi's nodded with satisfaction. With the knowledge of jewelry design stored in the brain and molecular manipulation, this princess hair crown was created perfectly. No designer can design such pure natural jewelry. No, it is not a commodity but a work of art. If you take it out and sell it, it is impossible to buy it without a few $100 million USD. Definitely, this is not over yet. I saw his hand tap on Clarice, neck and hand respectively. Earrings and necklaces, as well as a ring, appeared on her separately. With the embellishment of these jewels, Clarice's beauty is even more thrilling. God. 35. Clarice has been stunned by the gemstone necklace on her neck and the diamond ring on her hand. She has never seen such a beautiful necklace and ring. Definitely, the most important thing is the diamond ring on the middle finger of the right hand. Did he confess to me? Clarice slightly covered her mouth and looked at him in disbelief. Levi's didn't know what Clarice was thinking, and he was too moved to see her looking at him like that. As for why she gave her a ring, she was definitely afraid of being harassed by other men at the banquet. The ring on the middle finger of the right hand represents the owner of the famous flower, which he still knows. Come with me, beautiful lady, You can definitely be the most dazzling presence at the banquet tonight. Levi's extended his hand very gentlemanly. Clarice gently handed him her hand with a smile on her face. So off. Levi smiled. The next moment, the two disappeared in place. Damn, are you a step too late? Just after the two left, Polaris and Little Naughty came to Clarice's room. I heard some students talk about Levi's being outside Clarice's room just now, and a few people hurried over, but they were a step too late. The other side. Levi's and Clarice had come outside the banquet hall. Tony had said, Omega. Who are these two? They're too bright. Tell me who they are. This gentleman is too handsome. Although he has an oriental face, he is more handsome than all the handsome guys I have ever seen. My God. Which lady is too beautiful? I'm sure she is definitely the most dazzling one tonight. I wonder if I can invite her to dance later. Does anyone know who they are? It's like a face I've never seen before. As soon as the two appeared, they attracted a lot of discussion from the crowd, and all 4.1 people praised their handsomeness and beauty. Hee, Clarice, I'll say you are the most beautiful tonight. 99 Levi's looked down at Clarice and smiled. Clarice took his arm and smiled and said nothing. Come on, let's go in. The two entered the banquet hall. Hey, look who this is. At this point Tony walked over from the banquet hall with open arms. Levi's had no choice but to hug him. Let me introduce to you, this is Mr. Levi's, the largest shareholder of Stark Industries. 35 Tony put his arm around his shoulder and introduced to everyone. As soon as these words came out, the business elites present were a little surprised. Some people were still speculating about Levi's identity just now, but they didn't expect that he was actually the second largest shareholder of Stark Industries. You must know that the current Stark industry has not only not declined after giving up the military industry, but has become more prosperous after Tony turned to technology products. Everyone knows that Stark Industries is stronger than ever. Chapter 77 Black Widows, Natasha Romanoff's invitation. 10. After learning about Levi's identity, everyone's eyes became flattered when they looked at him. At this time, Tony put his arms around his shoulders and whispered, Hey, why did you bring a dance partner here? Vice? What? Can't you bring a dance partner to the banquet? Levi's raised his eyebrows. No, I thought you knew. After all, there are many beauties here. You are just a little less handsome than me. You will definitely be able to fascinate many beauties. Tony pointed at the scantily clad beauties around him. Levi's rolled his eyes when he heard his words. Do you think I'd be interested in these women? Tony couldn't help looking back at Clarice not far behind when he heard his words. I hadn't noticed it just now, but Tony was a little surprised when he saw it. As a qualified playboy, Tony has seen not 10,000 or 8,000 beauties, but there has never been a woman who can give him the same amazing feeling as the one in front of him. Tony turned his head and gave him a thumbs up, somewhat enviously. Maybe you're right. That's definitely. Lee 22 Vice smiled smugly. Hey, Tony. At this time, a black man in a suit came over and called Rod, you are here at the right time. Let me introduce you to. Tony was very happy to see the black man pulling him over. This is Levi's, my good friend. And this is his dance partner. This is Rhodes, Colonel of the Army. Hello Mr. Vice, I heard Tony said about you. Thank you for saving him back. Rhodes extended his hand very enthusiastically. Colonel Rhodes, it's a pleasure to meet you. Levi smiled and shook hands with him. He definitely knew Tony's friend Rhodes. He was also the only one who received Tony's iron armor in the original book, later known as War Machine. Is this beautiful lady your dance partner? Really beautiful. Thank you. Clarice nodded shyly with a smile. Rod, you can't say that. Actually, I wanted to invite this beautiful lady to a dance just now. Tony joked. Sorry, I can't dance. Clarice immediately refused. Oh, that's a pity. 99 Tony looked regretful. Hey, Tony, it's not a good idea to invite my dance partner in front of my face, Levi said with a deliberate stern face. Tony shrugged and smiled. It's normal at a dance. If the lady wants to, you can invite her to dance. By the way, this girl, I don't know your name yet. My name is Clarice. Clarice introduced herself with a smile. Nice name, Tony complimented, and then smiled at Levi's. Vice, you can't be too restrictive to your girlfriend, because she needs her own space too. Trust me, I'm in this regard very experienced. Levi's definitely knew that it was normal for girls to be invited to dance at the ball, and he wasn't angry. It was just a joke. As a qualified playboy, I'm pretty underwhelmed in this regard, but speaking of it, Tony, you haven't officially been in a relationship yet. You believe me, I've been through countless women. Tony's trying to argue something. You've never been in a relationship, Levi said calmly. It's impossible, nobody in New York doesn't know me. 35 Tony was still trying to explain, but Levi's had already seen through him. Although he is a playboy on the surface, he is a sullen person on the inside. The original book has tried to confess to Xiaochili many times, but he has been unable to say it. Make the audience worry about him. So you have a lot of experience in confessing? Levi smiled with his arms crossed. That's definitely. There is no woman I can't handle, Tony said rather domineeringly. Really, if you can confess to the lady behind you, I will believe what you say. Tony looked back subconsciously when he heard his words. Behind him, Pepper came over helplessly. Tony, I've been looking for you for a long time, so you're here. 99. Forehead. Tony was at a loss for words when he saw the little Pepper who came over, and he was a little embarrassed when he just praised Haiku. Hey, Tony, show me your courage and let me see if you're very experienced. Levi's teased with a smile on his chest with his arms crossed. In fact, he found out that Pepper was coming just now, so that's why he attracted Tony to the sleeve. Sure enough, Tony got caught. An embarrassed Tony looked at him and then at Pepper, then turned around and walked around with his arms around Pepper and said, I'm sorry, I have something important to talk to Pepper about now. I'll find you later. You. Looking at Tony leaving in a daze, Levi's couldn't help laughing. It's strange, why did Mr. Stark become so timid when he saw that young lady? Clarice asked with some doubts. Haha, that woman's name is Pepper Potts, Tony's assistant, so they like each other, but Tony doesn't dare to confess. Levi's said, then dragged Clarice to the banquet hall and sat down. Clarice was a little surprised to hear this. Didn't you say that Mr. Stark is a playboy? Why don't you dare to confess? He's really a playboy. Yes, but he's a little sullen inside. Levi said with a smile on his face. Clarice nodded thoughtfully. With the start of the banquet, the whole banquet hall was also lively. Will this beautiful lady ask you to dance with me? Sorry, I don't want to dance right now. Clarice decisively shook her head and refused. 490. With the increasing number of people in the banquet hall, after seeing Clarice, who was the brightest in the whole ball, they came to invite her to dance. But without exception, they were all rejected by her. Levi sighed with some boredom, drinking red wine. Why don't any beautiful women invite me to dance? Clarice was about to say something, but I saw a beautiful woman with long wine red hair and a bumpy figure walking over. The beauty looked at Levi's and smiled. Can I invite you to dance with me? Black Widow, 35. Levi's looked a little surprised at the beautiful woman in front of him. He didn't expect that Black Widow would take the initiative to invite him. Looks like you know me. Black Widow Natasha Romanoff looked at him curiously. Natasha Romanoff had been out on missions before, and when she returned to SHIELD, she discovered that Nick Fury had just established an organization called the Avengers, and the confidentiality level of this organization turned out to be level 9. You must know that SHIELD has a total of 10 levels of confidentiality. Among them, the 9th level is already a top secret black box level, and this level is not accessible to few people in the entire SHIELD. What surprised her was that her name was also written in it, and another name made her a little curious. Levi's, a mutant, joined SHIELD, which puzzled Natasha Romanoff. Chapter 78. Signing in. Natasha Romanoff, Psychic Cannonball. As a colleague, I definitely know you. With that said, Levi stood up and took the initiative to grab Natasha Romanoff's hand. Beautiful lady, can you please dance with me? 35. Definitely, but wouldn't that make your little girlfriend jealous? Natasha Romanoff teased. It's okay, I'll dance with her for a while longer. Levi's shrugged. Clarice was not jealous, but rather happy, because when she found out that when others said that she was his girlfriend, he did not object. This change made her very happy. Vice, have fun, I'll be waiting for you here. Okay, call me if you have anything. Levi's nodded and then pulled Natasha Romanoff to the dance floor. Although he had never danced, the super brain taught him how to dance instantly. Skillfully hugging Natasha Romanoff's waist, the two danced gracefully on the dance floor. Speaking of Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff is also a character he likes very much. Definitely not greedy for her body. After all, Black Widow's reputation is not good, and she has unclear relationships with many people. But it's okay to be friends. By the way, can I call your name? Levi's laughed, looking at Natasha Romanoff in front of him. Definitely. Natasha Romanoff nodded. What I want to ask is, why did Miss Natasha Romanoff show up at the banquet? Definitely, if it's a classified mission. 55. You can know this at your level. Natasha Romanoff thought about it and said, it's like this. We found that Tony has been a little abnormal recently, not only giving money to others at will, but also having a very bad temper. According to my investigation, he appears to be poisoned. Oh? Exclamation mark. Hearing this, Levi's was surprised to find that today's banquet was actually the banquet where Rhodes wore the steel armor and ransacked Tony in the original book. It seems that although he healed Tony's chest injury, the palladium poisoning has not been resolved. But looking at Tony just now, it is obvious that the palladium poisoning is not as severe as the original. After all, he was only exposed to palladium when using the arc reactor. There is no need to carry the arc reactor with you all the time as in the original. Definitely, it wouldn't be too poisonous if he gave up using steel armor. But when Tony created the steel armor, he was destined not to give up, even at the cost of his life. I have not yet investigated the specific poisoning, but as Tony's condition worsens, it must be clear what the poisoning is soon. Natasha Romanoff continued. I see. Levi's nodded. Natasha Romanoff looked at him curiously and said, according to the director, Mr. Vice is an amazing person. What do you think about this matter? That's it. If it's the cause of Tony's poisoning, I have some guesses. Oh? Mr. Vice, what do you know? Tony's poisoning should have been after that kidnapping. Levi's reminded a little. As a top agent, Natasha Romanoff immediately understood what he meant. You mean that suit of armor? It's really the arc reactor. I understand. Natasha Romanoff nodded suddenly, then looked at him and smiled. What the director said is really good. Mr. Vice is really amazing. Really? Levi smiled slightly. It ends with a piece of music. Natasha Romanoff chuckled. Mr. Vice, go and accompany your little girlfriend. If you don't go, it may be a little troublesome. When Levi's heard the words, he looked at the place where Clarice was, and saw several men entangled. See you next time then. 39. Levi's said and turned and walked towards Clarice. But before leaving, he signed in directly with Natasha Romanoff. Ding. Did the host sign into Natasha Romanoff? Ding. Sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Psychic Cannonball, with 100 experience points. Huh? It's actually this ability. Levi's was a little surprised. I didn't expect that what Natasha Romanoff signed was not her ability, but a super ability with a vague concept of Psychic Cannonball. It can be said that this is also a very bug ability. Just looking at the name of this super ability may think it is psychokinesis, but it is not just as simple as psychokinesis. Actual performance can be seen as the embodiment of one's own will, referred to as mind skills. The person who has this super ability is called Sokabanjunba, who is a rough stone super ability. He has super defensive power and recovery power, and believes that only his will can defend against all attacks and restore his own injuries. His body is so powerful that he can punch at several times the speed of sound and move at twice the speed of sound, stomping on the air to jump in the air, easily smashing the flying debris. The fist wind generated by punching with force is enough to extinguish the fire. And the name of the cannonball is actually his unique trick. What can be called super punch is his nirvana, generating huge amounts of shockwaves through powerful punches. Definitely. The effect of this ability is far more than that. It's more of a conceptual ability, like if you think you can do it, you can do it. Thinking of this, Levi's face is full of smiles. It seems that Natasha Romanoff is really his lucky star. At the same time, Natasha Romanoff looked at his back, only to feel that this person was very interesting and very simple. Sophisticated. She could tell that it was the first time the other party had come to such a place. Hey, what are you two going to do to my dance partner? Vice, you're here. Clarice, who had been frowning all the time, showed a bright smile when she saw him coming. The two middle-aged men couldn't help but feel even more excited when they saw her smile. Obviously, the two did not pay attention to the meaning of the person behind them. Seeing this, Levi sighed. There are always people who like to be self-righteous. I think you two should go dance by yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the two middle-aged men turned and left without saying a word, and then they hugged, nose, together and started dancing in public. This scene made everyone present a little strange. However, what surprised them was that the movements of the two middle-aged men became different when they danced. Quick, pull the two of them out for me. Seeing that something was wrong, the security guards at the banquet took the two out directly. Vice, you did it. Clarice couldn't help whispering in his ear after seeing this scene. If you want to take my dance partner, I won't agree. Levi's laughed. Can a beautiful girl ask you to dance with me? Clarice was a little happy, but also a little worried. But I can't dance. It's okay, I'll teach you. Clarice listened to him and put her hand in his. Levi's pulled gently, and Clarice fell into his arms. Then the two slowly came to the dance floor and danced gracefully. Chapter 79. Pit Tony 10 sets of steel armor. Clarice looked at him tightly with big eyes, biting her lips as if she wanted to say something. Huh? Levi's looked at her suspiciously, waiting for her to follow. That's when Clarice mustered the courage to say something. Boom boom boom. The sudden loud noise made all the dancers stop. What happened? Clarice's original courage was also interrupted by this sudden movement. Levi's opened the perspective and looked at the ceiling. I can only see that there are two robots fighting each other upstairs. Who else would these two be besides Tony and Rhodes? It seems that Tony still intends to take this opportunity to give the steel armor to Rhodes. Perhaps this is also an explanation to the military. Some time ago, the military accused Tony of making powerful weapons and asked him to turn in the steel armor. Tony definitely doesn't want to, but it's useless if he doesn't want to. The military made it clear that it wanted steel armor. However, in the end it was Rhodes who supported him, which prevented the military's conspiracy from succeeding. But it is clear that the greedy military will not give up, and instead of the steel armor falling into the hands of the military, it is better to fall into the hands of his good friend Rhodes. This is Tony's idea. Think 490 here. Levi's shook his head and ignored it. Clarice, don't bother with so much, let's keep dancing. However, before he could finish speaking, Tony and Rhodes smashed through the ceiling and fell into the middle of the dance floor. A lot of rubble and glass were scattered, and the nearest Levi's and Clarice suffered. Fortunately, He protected Clarice in time. I said, can you two go out and fight? Levi's looked at the two with a dark face. Rhodes was apologetic when he saw that ordinary people were affected, and Tony felt a bad feeling when he saw his dark face. This feeling is right. I saw Levi's wave his hand. The next moment, the two of them were directly thrown out by the electromagnetic force, and fell into the fountain outside and fell into a mess. Hey, who the hell is your friend, Tony? Rhodes, who finally came over, looked at Tony with a confused expression and asked. He really couldn't understand how he was thrown out just now. You think I showed up in the house so suddenly? Because that guy is a powerful mutant. Tony opened the mask and let out a breath. It turned out to be a mutant. Rhodes suddenly realized, then ... Are we still fighting? FKU, 35. Tony rolled his eyes angrily, then stood up from the pool, turned around and left. And Rhodes flew away wearing the steel armor Tony gave him. In the ballroom, because of the fuss between Tony and Rhodes, everyone was a little surprised, for fear that the two robots rushed in from somewhere again. Ordinary people can't stop those two guys with steel body. And Levi's action was very secretive, and no one could see that it was his hand that flew out. Soon everyone at the banquet dispersed. Let's go back to. Clarice was a little worried. Don't worry, no one can hurt you if I'm here, Levi's said indifferently while eating snacks. Come on, you're welcome. Saying that, he handed a piece of cake directly to Clarice's mouth. Seeing this, Clarice took a bite without hesitation. Hey, this didn't bother you. 35. By this time Tony had changed into a suit and came over. When Levi's heard this, he couldn't help rolling his eyes. Don't you have any points in your heart? Tony choked directly. You just gave away your steel armor, didn't you see? He stole it himself. Tony sat down beside him, spread his hands and said helplessly. It seems that you need special certification to wear your armor. Levi's directly debunked his lie. Tony, who was dismantled, was a little embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Levi's also understands his idea of playing this play. After all, if it is a gift, it may cause more coveted by more capitalists. After all, you Iron Man can give steel armor to others, why can't you give them? But it's different if it's stolen. If you want to grab the iron armor, you have to ask Iron Man if he is willing. Let's get down to business. Tony, aren't you going to give up being Iron Man? Levi said, poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed him one. Give up Iron Man? What a joke. Tony took the wine glass and looked at him in disbelief. If you don't give up, you will die sooner or later. 35. Tony was startled and subconsciously said, how do you know? 35. I know what's going on with you. Do you have perspective? Tony joked. When Levi's heard this, he was stunned in his heart. How could he guess so? But he wasn't bored enough to use clairvoyance to see Tony. You really plan to die like this? What will happen to your steel armor after you die? And what will happen to your little pepper? Levi's words were all in Tony's heart, and he wasn't willing to die like this. But there is no way. During this time, I have also found many ways, but it is useless. There is nothing that can replace the palladium element. 5. Tony said and took a swig of wine. Have you really tried everything? Levi's chuckled as he tasted the wine. Hearing this, Tony's eyes suddenly lit up. What can you do? I have the ability to create unknown substances. There is such an ability! Exclamation mark. Tony was both amazed and surprised. As a scientist, he could never imagine that this world has the super ability that can create unknown matter. If it is possible to create any substance, it does not mean that any object can be created. As long as a substance that can replace palladium is created, the disadvantage of palladium poisoning can be solved. Thinking of this, Tony stared at him with hot eyes. You want me to help you create a substance to replace the palladium element? Definitely, but, Levi said and paused. Just say it. How much? Tony patted his chest indifferently. I'm not short of money. He rolled his eyes and said, I want you to tailor 10 sets of steel armor for me. What? It's impossible. Tony got excited when he heard the 10 suits of armor. He doesn't have that much himself. Don't be so excited. All I want you to build is the outer armor. I will find a way for the energy core. Levi's patted Tony on the shoulder and smiled. Before coming back to the banquet, he had already decided to bring Tony over to be a tool man. Wasn't he going to hold a competition in the mutant school some time ago? His idea is to equip everyone who joins the X-Men with a suit of steel armor. Chapter 80. A wonderful evening with Clarice. Definitely, he can build the steel armor himself, but with such a good tool person as Tony, why should he do it himself? And if the energy core of the armor is the arc reactor, he can use the reactor created by his own last element material. In this way, the problem of palladium hazard in the arc reactor is perfectly solved. That doesn't work. Do you know how much time and money it takes to build a set of steel armor? A set of at least 500 million USD. Tony still shook his head. Money is not a problem. I'll give it to you. Levi waved his hand indifferently. Money earned is for use. Anyway, he is also the second shareholder in Stark Industries. If one set of armor is 500 million, 10 sets are only 5 billion. Tony's face darkened when he heard this, and he still used the company's money after a long time. No more than 5 sets at most. 5 sets? Tony, you need to know that I saved your life. So is your life worth 5 sets of armor? At least 9 sets are required. No, it takes a lot of time and energy to build a battle armor, and it's the only one, so I think 6 sets are good. Tony, I have to say that you are too good at bargaining. I don't think any aunt in the vegetable market can bargain without you. At least 8 sets are required, no less. Vice, I think you're the most greedy profiteer in the world. You can't have more than 7 sets at most. The two were just like buying vegetables in a vegetable market, constantly haggling over the price. Clarice on the side looked at the noisy two people and felt a little speechless. Okay, 8 sets have been sold, Tony. Let me tell you, you definitely earned the price. 39 Levi's patted Tony's shoulder hard and smiled. This round of bargaining ultimately ended in his victory. Vice, I should give you back what you said just now. You are even better at bargaining than the aunt in the market. Tony looked at him resentfully. Haha, don't worry about it so much. I can provide you with more end element substances. That's what you said, Tony said hastily. Definitely. Levi's nodded nonchalantly. It was too easy for him to create the ultimate substance. Alright then, cheers. Tony's face showed a triumphant smile. In fact, he didn't care about the money at all. His purpose was just to make Levi's cooperate with his research. After all, the magical ability of the end element material is really useful for his research. Cheers. Levi's also raised his glass with a smile. Don't get drunk tonight. Tony took another bottle of red wine and poured it on him. Tony can be said to be very tough when it comes to drinking, and he also wants to teach him a lesson on drinking. But Tony's idea is doomed to fail. Levi's is like a Superman after his body evolves, and it's impossible for Tony to drink him down. He also looked a little drunk after drinking Tony easily. Vice, are you alright? Clarice stayed by his side the whole time, worried when she saw how drunk he was. It's definitely fine, I'm fine now. Levi's waved his hand. If he wanted to wake up, he would be sober in no time. But he really enjoyed the feeling of being drunk. Mr. Vice, if you want to rest, the room is here. The waiter on the side bowed. Okay, take me to the room. Levi's waved his hand. Plaza, follow me. The waiter nodded and led the way. Clarice followed behind with Levi's. Arriving in an extremely luxurious room, Levi's lay on the bed without looking at it. Don't go to sleep. Take a shower first. Clarice pushed him. Take a shower? Okay. Although Levi's was a little too lazy to move, he didn't allow himself to sleep all over because of his cleanliness. After a drunken shower, Levi's fell asleep. Clarice had no choice but to pack up the scattered clothes for him. After a long time, Levi's, who was drowsy, suddenly felt something sticking up, and he woke up in an instant. In the dark, you don't need to look to know who it is. The next day, Levi's didn't wake up until it was 3 poles in the sun. She smiled and looked at Clarice beside her, then got up to take a shower and then went out for breakfast. Hey, Tony, up so early? Levi's looked at Tony in the hall with some surprise, and then unceremoniously picked up a piece of pizza from the pizza box in front of him and ate it. Flowers. I don't think you need it at night. Tony teased with a wink. It's not like I don't want someone to be hollowed out. Levi's replied, rolling his eyes. Hey, you can doubt me about anything, but you must not underestimate me in this regard. 35. It seemed that dignity was being challenged, and Tony became a little excited. Levi's didn't say anything but gave him a contemptuous look. As a playboy, how can my body get better after years of alcohol emptiness? Compared with myself, it is completely a man's arm and a car. Although Tony was a little unconvinced when he saw the contempt in his eyes, he didn't bother to take a comparison. 0. Okay, man, it's time for us to work. After eating the pizza, Tony took Levi's into his lab. Come here, let me tell you about this thing first. Tony pulled him to a workbench with some structural drawings on it. Tony operated a few times in the void, a virtual projection appeared, and then the core structure of the arc reactor appeared in front of him. Vice, I still don't understand your ability. Can you create palladium without side effects? Tony looked at him and asked. Definitely, if it is a substitute for palladium. 35. When Levi's heard the words, the corners of his mouth curled up with a smile. The end element material I created can add properties to it autonomously. That is to say, it is completely possible for me to make the last element I create have the properties of palladium metal, and correspondingly, I can also kick out the substances in palladium that are harmful to the human body, just like this. As he spoke, a piece of diamond-shaped metal slowly condensed in his hand. This is the palladium metal created by the last element. But there is no harm of palladium to the human body. Fantastic. Tony operated the robotic arm beside him to pick up the metal in his hand, and then started a series of inspections. Although he believed in Levi's, testing was essential. Chapter 81 Creation of the Last Elemental Matter Reactor. Seeing that Tony was busy testing, Levi's looked at the structure of the arc reactor in front of him. Maybe Tony thought he didn't understand this, so he exposed this so generously. However, Levi's mechanical ability is no worse than Tony's. Just a glance, all the structures of the arc reactor have been recorded in his super brain. Immediately after that, he kept analyzing, and it only took a moment to completely analyze every detail of the arc reactor. It can be said that the arc reactor in front of him has no secrets in front of him. Immediately afterwards, He stretched out his palm to use molecular manipulation, and began to create various metal elements of the arc reactor. In an instant, the palm-sized arc reactor continued to take shape in his hand. God! When Tony inadvertently looked back and saw this scene, he was stunned. Until the arc reactor 493 in his hand took shape, Tony's jaw was about to fall. Levi's looked at the arc reactor in his hand and nodded with satisfaction. No, this can no longer be called the arc reactor, but should be called the end element material reactor. In fact, the so-called arc reactor is nothing more than a large storage battery, and the electricity inside is the energy brought by cold nuclear fusion produced by palladium metal. The palladium metal will produce substances harmful to the human body during cold nuclear fusion. But Levi's, the palladium metal created from the last element, doesn't have that shortcoming. Here's the thing. Levi's threw the arc reactor at Tony. Hey, be careful. Tony hurriedly took over the arc reactor and was relieved. Vice, I never knew you had this ability, and you stole my arc reactor. But you have to pay royalties. 99. Tony looked at the end element material reactor in his hand, and thought the most. I didn't let you show it to me. It's not for nothing. Levi's doesn't look embarrassed at all. Even if Tony doesn't show him, he can get the data by hacking the network here by electromagnetic waves. And after reading it, Tony can't help it. He can't really ask him for royalties. At this time, Tony's test results of the palladium metal created by the last element material just now came out. It's great. After testing, the palladium metal you created with the last element perfectly avoided its shortcomings, so this arc reactor has no side effects. Tony looked at the test data excitedly. No, I gave it a new name. It's called the last elemental matter reactor. Levi's touched his chin and said. Tony heard the words and said that it doesn't matter. Anyway, only he can create this kind of reactor, and there is no need to worry about someone stealing his patent. Then Tony pulled the end element material reactor to the front of his steel armor and carefully put it in. The connection was successful, and a dazzling white light burst out from the chest of the steel armor. It's so cool. Tony folded his arms and admired his steel armor. It would be better if he could be made more portable. It's a good idea, but don't forget the 8 suits you promised. You can rest assured, as long as you decide the performance requirements, I will start building it immediately. But you also have to help me research and update the new type of reactor. No problem. Levi's nodded. This is a win-win cooperation. If Tony develops a more portable reactor, he can use it directly too. As for whether Tony will discover the new elements his dad left him, that's not something Levi's should think about. The end element material reactor in front of him is far from his limit, and he can easily develop a more powerful end element material reactor. Then the doorbell of the laboratory rang. Vice, I heard you're here. 35. Clarice hurried over after seeing Levi's, looking at him with a worried expression. Not being able to see him after just waking up, Clarice shouldn't worry too much. Don't worry, Clarice, you haven't had breakfast yet. I've saved some pizza for you. Levi's gently held Clarice in his arms, and took the pizza from the living room that was left in the living room. By the way, use the flame control to heat it up. Eat it while it's hot. Yeah. Clarice nodded with a happy smile, then took a piece and ate it, her eyes full of tenderness. Hey, can you two leave my lab first? Tony, who had eaten a huge bowl of dog food, couldn't take it any longer. Envy, you can too. Do you dare to go taxi out chilly to confess? Levi's put one arm around Clarice and looked at Tony defiantly. Speaking of this, Tony immediately stopped. Cut. 99. Seeing his cowardly look, Levi's directly stretched out his middle finger and made an international gesture. If it's okay, we'll leave. Let's go. Tony waved his hand and turned to start researching. Suddenly he thought of something and turned around and said, by the way, do you want to come to the Technology Expo in a few days? After all, you are also a major shareholder of the company. Tech Fair? 9. Levi's thought about it. This Technology Expo should be when Justin Hammer's Upstart and Ivan Vanke are doing things. I'm not going. But you have to be careful, that Ivan Vanke may be working with Justin Hammer. Call me if you need help. He is not interested in watching a few Iron Men fight. The so-called Iron Armor is just a toy in front of him. After speaking, he waved his arms around Clarice and disappeared into the laboratory. It's a really convenient ability. Tony didn't pay too much attention to this, and then turned back to continue his research. Mutant Academy. Levi's called the X-Men as soon as they got back. Vice, what happened to Iron Man's banquet this time? Storm asked curiously. Levi's nodded with a smile. Yeah, something did happen, but let's wait for Uncle Lorna and Logan. Soon, Logan also came to the war room, but frowned when he saw him. Did you enjoy the party? Logan asked casually. Definitely. Levi's nodded, somewhat confused about what Logan meant. Remember to bring Mary next time. 4.1? Hearing this, Levi's was stunned for a moment, then nodded thoughtfully. It seems that the little naughty said something to Logan. Is it the reason why she didn't take her there this time? The little naughty was brought to the Mutant Academy by Logan. The two were like father and daughter. It was normal for the little naughty to tell Logan what he had in his heart. After a while, the North Star finally arrived. Okay, since everyone is here, let me say two things. The first is that the school should hold the competition as soon as possible, preferably in these few days. 35. Is this too soon? The students on the list have just started training. Storm wondered. Before Levi's gave her a list. This list is the X-Men alternates, and she is training them urgently these days. However, this has only just begun to train, and I am afraid that it will have little effect. Chapter 82. Lorna, am I really good? Levi's waved his hand and said, it doesn't matter, only in real battles can you show a person's ability, and you don't have to worry about students getting injured. I can save them as long as they don't die on the spot. Alright then. Seeing that he had said so, Storm had no choice but to agree. And the second thing? Cyclops asked. Well you should all know Tony's steel armor. I think no one in New York doesn't know about Iron Man's iron armor. Cyclops is actually a fan of Iron Man too. I've ordered 8 steel suits from Tony. Several people were a little surprised when Levi said this. That should be Iron Man's baby. Why would he sell it to you? Logan said in disbelief. No, it's not for sale. In short, you all have the right to make some demands on your steel armor, and I will tell Tony your demands after I confirm, and then he can start building it. I'm not interested in that kind of iron shell. Logan stretched out his paws and gestured a few times with a look of disdain. In his 22 view, the tin box can be easily destroyed. Uncle Logan, if you don't want it, don't you regret it later? Levi's looked at him in surprise. Logan waved his hand, completely unconcerned. Well, is there anyone who doesn't want it? He looked at Cyclops and Storm. Several people didn't speak. Let's not say whether this thing is useful or not. Don't want it for nothing. In that case, tell me your requirements as soon as possible, and that's all I have to say. 39. After Levi's finished speaking, he looked at everyone, and seeing that they had nothing to say, he immediately announced the meeting. After leaving the war room, Polaris followed him all the time. Coughed. Lorna, do you have anything to say? 35. For some reason, Levi's at the moment always has a guilty conscience in the face of North Star. Vice, you and Clarice didn't come back all night. Polaris stared at him tightly. This because the banquet ended too late, and I was drunk too. 35. You did it. Polaris interrupted him. Leviston was at a loss for words when he saw her so direct. At the moment, the North Star was very angry, and he didn't want it, but he was cut off by his good sister. Thinking of this, Polaris was about to cry with anger. Vice, are you still a man? 35. Hey, you can't talk nonsense like this. I'm very violent. He didn't say anything nonsense. Don't you see how badly Clarice was repaired that night? Then show it to me. Polaris grabbed his collar excitedly. Hearing this, Roushi Levi's couldn't help but get angry because he didn't want to mess with the relationship. With anger in his head, he didn't care about anything. He hugged the North Star horizontally, moved in space, and disappeared in place. The next day, Lorna, tell me, am I fierce? 35. Levi's raised Lorna's chin. Crossbow. Lorna dazedly opened his hand and fell asleep. Going out in good spirits, Levi's stretched out against the dazzling sun. Vice. At this time, Clarice came over not far away, and looked at him with big eyes aggrieved. Looking at Clarice, he only felt a bit of a headache, and the day before he had decided in his heart that having Clarice as a woman was enough. Unexpectedly, he slapped himself in the face the next day. Levi's murmured in his heart, it seems that his control is not so bad. Why did he have a fever last night? As he was thinking in his heart, he did not move slowly, and hugged Clarice in his arms to comfort him. Clarice, you also know that you can't do it alone. After all, you have a deep understanding of my power. Clarice suddenly remembered that wonderful and terrifying night when she heard him say that. Don't think about it, Clarice. I'll always love you. 35. Although Levi's used this kind of sweet-talking attack for the first time, fortunately, the superbrain has recorded all the knowledge of chat bubbles in the network. It's easy to deal with this situation. And with the existence of spiritual hints, Clarice quickly forgave him. 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. The school super ability competition is also in preparation for Storm and Cyclops. And today is the day the game starts. I saw that the huge playground in the academy was transformed into a simple arena. The students also completed the registration in these 3 days. There are a lot more students in the entire Mutant Academy than in the original book, with a total of about 500 people. And this time, nearly 100 people signed up for the super ability competition. Seeing that everything was almost ready, Levi's said to Cyclops beside him, when you are ready, let's announce the start. 35. When do you go up and say a few words? Cyclops tilted his head and motioned for him to go up and speak. Well, that's fine. Levi's thought for a while and stood on the high platform. Cough cough tilde. Please calm down everyone. 35. Hearing his words, the students below who had been noisy suddenly all quieted down. Let me just say a few words as the leader of the X-Men. Levi's looked at the many students below and said, first of all, please take this super ability competition seriously, and don't be afraid of getting hurt. Second, you should already know the rewards for the top 10, 493. In addition to the opportunity to join the X-Men, I will add one more, and that is Iron Man's steel armor. This time, the students present couldn't help but talk about it. My god, is this true? Can you get a steel armor? Iron Man is my most admired hero. Can I really get his steel armor? I can't believe I have to be in the top 10. What is the top 10? I must win the first place. 566 Forget it, John. Number 1 must be mine. Let's see. Who wins and who loses is not necessarily the case. Originally, everyone was very interested in this super ability competition, but after learning that the top 10 had a chance to win the steel armor, the atmosphere of the whole scene was immediately detonated. Levi's pressed his hands down, and the students fell silent. Definitely, the conditions for joining the X-Men are not necessarily to be in the top 10, as long as your performance is bright enough. You can also join the X-Men to get the steel armor. Hearing this, the students were even more excited. Originally, some students thought they had little chance of entering the top 10, but now, even those who did not enter the top 10 have the opportunity to join the X-Men and get the steel armor. Chapter 83 Sign into Quicksilver. How fierce is super speed? Okay, I'll stop talking nonsense. 39 Levi's returned to his seat on the high platform. Then Cyclops announced the start of the game. The game is only one-on-one elimination, which means that half of the players will be wiped out in the first round. I'm going. Wanda came to his side with big red eyes staring at him tightly. Come on, Levi's encouraged with a smile. I will. Encouraged, Wanda immediately ran away with a smile on her face. Although Wanda's origin magic power has not been awakened, and she is still young, she cannot fully exert the power of origin magic power. But it should not be underestimated. I saw Wanda's hands glowing red, just like psychokinesis directly grabbed and threw it off the ring. The opponent was defeated without even reacting. Is this origin magic power? It's really powerful, Levi's exclaimed in his heart, and wanted to get this ability even more. Now his system panel, host, Levi's super ability, vector operation, space movement, frozen control, flame control, energy absorption, electromagnetic force, evolution, telepathy, super infrasound, space reversal, atomic collapse, stealth, molecular manipulation, dragon incarnation, super brain, weather control, vibration, end elemental matter, traversal, mechanical heart, ionization, illusion, perspective, psychic cannonball, super regeneration. Super ability level, LV.4, 4th level mutant. Experience value, 9,010 It wasn't until yesterday that Levi's remembered that he had not signed into Wolverine. After signing into Wolverine, he obtained the super ability of super regeneration. And with this period of check-in, Levi's is getting closer and closer to becoming a 5th level mutant. Thinking of this, he felt a little excited. As long as he becomes a 5th level mutant, it can be said that there are not many people who can threaten him in the whole Earth. Today's sign-in has not been used. Maybe you can find a good ability to sign in. Levi's thought about it and watched the game in the ring with interest. This game features Quicksilver and another student who can physically turn into a rock. After the start of the game, the student whose body could turn into stone was pushed off the ring by Quicksilver before he had time to transform. Vice. Did you see that just now? I defeated my opponent in an instant. At this time, Quicksilver, who easily defeated his opponent, instantly came to Levi's and showed off. Well done. Levi's smiled and praised. Suddenly he was stunned, because isn't the Quicksilver in front of him the best sign-in target today? I have been targeting origin magic power before, but I forgot that Quicksilver's super speed is also a very powerful super ability. In the reverse future, the Quicksilver under the ultra-high-speed movement can easily rescue everyone from an explosion. The scene that seemed to stop time was truly breathtaking. Even in Avengers 2, because this ability is too perverted, Quicksilver was forced to take the lunch. Judging from the performance of Avengers 2, this super ability seems to be stronger than origin magic power. Thinking of this, he signed Quicksilver without hesitation. Ding. Did the host check into the mutant Quicksilver? Yes. 35. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability super high speed, with 100 experience points. Success. 99. Hearing the system sign in success prompt, Levi's finally breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, his evolved body, coupled with the two abilities of Dragon Incarnation and Telekinetic Cannonball, can already allow him to move at the speed of sound. LV5's telekinetic shells can make him have twice the speed of sound. Definitely, he is currently only LV4. And after obtaining the super ability of super high speed, the previous speed is nothing at all. Now he can easily run hundreds of times the speed of sound. The limit speed of Quicksilver is close to the speed of light, which is much worse than DC Flash. However, Levi's limit is far more than that. Once he becomes LV5, going beyond the speed of light is only a matter of course. Even the Flash can match his speed. Thinking of this, he was in a good mood. Then he disappeared in an instant, and then came back the next second. If you don't pay attention, you won't notice him disappearing at all. The North Star on the side seemed to notice. This is for you. 95. Under the gaze of Polaris, Levi's suddenly had a box of ice cream in his hand. Huh? Where did Vice come from? Little Naughty took an ice cream in confusion. Is it created using molecular structures? Give me a thank you too, Lauren demanded. Levi smiled and handed Lauren an ice cream, laughing. It wasn't created using molecular structures. It was bought at an ice cream parlor in New York. 35. Really? But didn't see you going out? Shadowcat was a little puzzled. It's using space to move. Clarice guessed. Almost. Levi smiled and nodded. In fact, he just ran to an ice cream shop in New York using super speed, and then ran back with the ice cream. Definitely. He didn't forget to pay. It only took a second to run back and forth, and it is conceivable how fast his speed was. The original Quicksilver is classified as a 3-level mutant, which is completely unreasonable. Even if it can't reach the level of the 5th-level mutant, it is still no problem to reach the 4th-level mutant. In this fierce competition, a day passed quickly. The first round of 50 games is finally over. Then the second and third days. On the 4th day, the first super ability competition finally ended, and the people who ended up in the top 10 were not what he expected. They are Clarice, Naughty, Shadowcat, Lauren, Andrew, Quicksilver, Wanda, Burning Man, Iceman, Colossus. It can be said that these 10 people are the strongest among the current students. In the war room, Levi's looked at the 10 of them and said with a chuckle, 66. First of all, congratulations to you for winning the top 10 in this super ability contest, and the promised bonus will definitely be given out with no small amount of money. You. At this time, Yuriko Koyama, the dead woman, on the side began to distribute a large stack of money to everyone. Everyone was very happy when they got the prize. Among them, Wanda won $40,000 as the first place. Definitely, Wanda can get the first place, thanks to the farmer that Quicksilver gave her. At this stage, Quicksilver's speed is very deadly for a magician like Wanda. Unsurprisingly, the second place was Quicksilver, who got $30,000. Iceman and Burning Man have really strong abilities, but their speed is too slow to hit Quicksilver, which is moving fast. Surprisingly, the third place turned out to be Lauren. She used molecular manipulation to beat her brother Andrew in a thrilling way. In fact, to say it, Andrew's molecular destruction power is stronger. But obviously Lauren worked harder to improve herself. The water molecules she condensed were as sharp as a blade, and could easily cut through steel. Chapter 84. Tony's So's. Seeing everyone's excitement, Levi smiled. Congratulations on joining the X-Men preliminaries. Boss, what is a qualifying team? John the Burning Man raised his hand and asked in confusion. The so-called pre-qualification team means to become the X-Men pre-qualifiers. I will let Cyclops and Storm arrange your training. If you pass, your sister can officially join the X-Men. 35. After hearing his explanation, everyone understood. Boss, I want to ask about that steel armor. Iceman Poppy also raised his hand and asked. Well, it will definitely be distributed after you become full members of the X-Men, but now you can tell me your requirements for the steel armor first. Levi's laughed. Anyway, these people will be the main members of the X-Men in the future, so it doesn't matter if Tony starts building in advance. Hearing this, everyone was full of energy and wanted to pass the training as soon as possible and become an official member of the X-Men. Immediately after, Cyclops and Storm began to make arrangements for the 10 of them, and Levi's was wondering how to get more steel armor from Tony. If you add these 10 people, the X-Men will already have 16 people plus themselves. Even if he didn't want it, and Wolverine didn't want it, that would require 14 sets of steel armor. The 8 sets he asked for before were not enough. Definitely, in fact, it is not necessary to need steel armor. For example, Colossus, if he wears a battle armor, it will affect his super ability to some extent. 493. But if he can be equipped with some high-tech weapons to assist him, it can greatly enhance his strength. Just as he was thinking about how to find an opportunity to blackmail Tony, the phone he was carrying with him suddenly rang. Picking it up, it turned out to be Tony calling. Levi's eyes lit up. Didn't this give a pillow when he fell asleep? Hey, come on, I need your help. On the other end of the phone, Tony's voice was very anxious because at the moment he is facing dozens of steel soldiers alone, although in his opinion these steel soldiers are just junk made by Ivan Vanke. But there are just too many, and even the steel armor worn by his good friend Rhodes has betrayed. Originally, I would not have asked Tony for help because of his pride, but there was really no way, because Pepper was also held hostage by a steel soldier. We have no problem with me, I can solve it. You go save Pepper first. 99. No problem, but 35. Don't but. I'll promise anything you want, Tony said anxiously. However, after waiting for a long time, he didn't hear Levi's answer, which made him a little confused. It was at this time. Hey, Tony, do you have anything to say to Pepper? You've saved Pepper? Tony asked in surprise. Definitely. Levi's used electromagnetic waves to find the location of Pepper when Tony said, I'll do whatever you want. Then it took 3 seconds to use super high speed to come to little Pepper, and easily rescued her. Hey, are you alright, Tony? It wasn't until Pepper's worried voice came from the phone that Tony recovered from his astonishment. Great. Pepper, are you alright? I'm alright. It was Mr. Vice who saved me. Oh. That's really good. Tony was relieved to hear that Pepper was alright. Where are you now, Tony? Pepper asked worriedly. Don't worry, little Pepper. I'll fix this right away. Wow. Before Tony could finish speaking, Raw let out a startled sound, and it seemed that things were not going well. Hey, Tony tilde Pepper kept calling, but there was no sound from Tony. Mr. Vice, can I ask you to save Tony? Pepper turned to look at him and said anxiously. Is that so? Levi's folded his arms and thought, in Tony's pride. He definitely doesn't want me to save him. But since you said so, he definitely has no opinion. He knew Tony very well, and with his sincere arrogance he said he could do it, even if it didn't. But since Xiaochili said so, he agreed without hesitation. It wasn't a big deal anyway. Speaking of which, he even went to the scene to see how Tony was bruised. Thank you, Pepper said gratefully. Pepper also knew that he was a mutant, and now he could only count on him to rescue Tony. You rest here for a while, and give you a full Tony later. After speaking, Levi's instantly disappeared in front of Pepper. At the same time, in an ecological botanical garden, Tony at the moment was dazed by the sudden bomb, and when he woke up, he was surrounded by more than a dozen steel soldiers. This is not good. I knew that had come to help just now. Tony at the moment there is some regret in his heart. He shouldn't be so arrogant just now. This is the end. Hey, Uncle Tony. Do you need help? At this moment, a voice sounded beside him. Tony looked over subconsciously, and saw Levi's floating cross-legged in the air, looking at him playfully with his chin on one hand. Tony was very happy to see him appear, but he felt that his face was overwhelmed, so he said quite dear, I didn't let you come. How can you be my opponent just with these rubbish? 99. Oh? Is it? Levi's was a little surprised, then smiled. Then I won't bother you. After speaking, he disappeared instantly. Hey, Tony was speechless when he saw him say go and left. I was just talking. Why did you take it seriously? However, before he could think about it, the surrounding steel soldiers started to attack. Bang bang bang. Countless bullets came. Although his steel armor could effectively defend against these bullets, the kinetic energy brought by the bullets could not be completely offset. At the moment, Tony is really too aggrieved, because his good friend Rhodes is present, so his ready-made killer can't be used easily. However, to add fuel to the fire, Ivan Vanke drove a steel armor down from the sky, kicking Tony to the ground with one kick. Tony, I heard you're speeding up. How about it? It's not bad. Ivan Vanke smiled smugly, waving two lightning whips in his hands and kept approaching. Tony slowly got up from the ground. You're just a loser. Losers? Tony, you don't seem to understand the situation. Saying that, a lightning whip in Ivan Vanke's hand slapped it directly. Tony rolled on the ground in embarrassment, dodging the blow dangerously. However, before he could counterattack, another lightning whip came over. Just as Tony was about to roll away from the whip again, Ivan Vanke's steel armor suddenly stopped. What happened? Ivan Vanke frowned and operated, but his steel arm remained motionless. Not only him, but all the steel soldiers around him stopped. Tony was stunned for a moment, and immediately saw Levi's sitting cross-legged in the sky. Smart as he doesn't know it's Levi's help. I didn't ask you to help. Although Tony was very grateful, his mouth was still so hard. Chapter 85 picked up Ivan Vanke as a tool man. Levi's looked at him with contempt. If it wasn't for Pepper, I wouldn't have come to save you. It's all said. I can handle it myself. 35 Tony said and came to Rhodes. Rod, are you okay? Sorry, I think I should return this armor to you. 35 Rhodes apologized very guiltily, and he was the one that caused Tony the most trouble after being controlled just now. Tony didn't care to help him up. Thanks. Rhodes thanked, then turned to look at Levi's and said, Vice, thank you very much this time. You're welcome. You'll be fine. It's not like someone won't thank you. Levi's said pointedly. When Rhodes heard the words, he looked at Tony who was beside him, and Tony's lips moved slightly after hearing this, but he didn't say thank you. Ivan Vanke, I didn't expect you to be alive. But now you're finished. At this time, Rhodes raised his arm, facing Ivan Vanke. It's impossible. It's impossible. Ivan Vanke repeated these words nervously at the moment. No matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't figure out why his system would get out of control. Wait first. Seeing that Rhodes seemed to be about to kill Ivan Vanke, Levi's, he hurriedly stopped him. What's wrong? Rhodes was a little puzzled, and it didn't matter if Ivan Vanke's crime was killed here. Leave this man to me. Levi's laughed. Ivan Vanke is also a rare technological genius, although not as good as Tony, but at least he has created the arc reactor. For now, few people in the whole world can make it. Such a genius is a little brainwashed and brought back as a tool. But he is the main culprit in this matter. Rhodes frowned. This incident was very noisy, and many people died because of it, and someone must be responsible for it. These steel soldiers all have self-destruction systems. You can just pretend that he died in the explosion. 35 Levi's waved his hand. What? Can these steel soldiers blow themselves up? Hearing this, Tony was startled, and immediately flew away without calling Raw, obviously worried about Pepper's safety. Levi's was a little speechless when he saw this. Although these steel soldiers had a self-destruction system, they didn't have to worry about self-destruction under the manipulation of his electromagnetic force. Okay Rhodes, you can leave first, just leave it to me. He waved to Rhodes beside him. Okay then. Seeing this, Rhodes could only helplessly nodded, and then flew away. After seeing him leave, Levi's used the space move to grab Ivan Vanke out of the steel armor. Then he activated the self-destruction system of these iron soldiers. Drop drop drop. I saw that every steel soldier's chest began to flash red light. Are you crazy? Hearing the beeping sound, Ivan Vanke finally regained his senses, but he found that his body could not move at all. Ivan Vanke, work for me well. Levi's mouth twitched slightly and the two disappeared in the next moment. At the same time, the iron soldiers also exploded at this moment. Somewhere in an underground research base. Master, you are here. Sisters Sophie and Phoebe, who have a spiritual network with Levi's, immediately greeted him when they noticed his arrival. Where's Mystique? Levi's asked. She's not here, Martha replied. Levi's didn't care either. The research base was jointly managed by Mystique, Sisters Maffei and Phoebe. Now that Mystique is gone, everything is handled by the sisters Sophie and Phoebe. This is a top scientist I hired. You can arrange it, Levi's said to the two sisters. Okay, I'll arrange it. Please come with me, Marv said and took Ivan Vanke down. Ivan Vanke, whose memory had been modified by Levi's, did not resist. Master, won't you stay for a while? Seeing him ready to leave, Phoebe hurriedly grabbed him. Master has something to do now, I'll be with you next time. Feeling Phoebe's hot body, Levi's quickly got rid of her with a dry cough. For some reason he felt that his self-control had dropped a bit, and he didn't have any reaction when facing Phoebe before. That's what you said, Master. Phoebe, who was pushed away, was a little dissatisfied with his hands on his hips. I have something to do, I'm leaving now. Levi's disappeared instantly. Wait until Marv returns. Huh? Phoebe, where's the master? It's gone, replied Phoebe. Have you left again? Sophie was a little disappointed. The other side. Levi's had just returned to the Tech Expo booth when he heard Tony and Pepper arguing about something. Tony, I can't take it anymore. 35. Seeking flowers. Can't stand it. I can't take the pressure anymore. I don't know when you're going to die or when the company is going to go down. 99. Pepper, calm down, no one pressures you, and I won't die. 99. But I can't take it anymore. I'm quitting. I'm quitting. What? You're actually going to resign? Tony couldn't believe he didn't expect Pepper to say such a thing. As an ordinary person, Chili Pepper has experienced many dangers with Tony. It is precisely because of the danger that will come at any time, coupled with the management of the entire company, that Xiao Chili feels extremely heavy pressure. She didn't know if the pressure would overwhelm her if it went on like this. Definitely, the main thing is that she had no reason to do so much for Tony. They were just friends after all. Levi's, who was watching the play, saw it very clearly. Although little Pepper likes Tony, but he doesn't want to drag it on forever. Who knows if Tony likes her? She didn't want her efforts to be pointless. It seemed that the only way to save little Pepper was to let Tony show his will. Let me help you. Levi smirked, then used telekinesis on Tony. This spiritual suggestion will not cause any harm to Tony. It will only make him speak his truth. I saw Tony suddenly hug the excited little Pepper. Pepper, I love you. What did you say? Chili covered her mouth lightly and looked at Tony in disbelief. I said I love you. No one loves you more than me, Tony said seriously. Levi's pouted at this, then turned to look to the other side. He didn't want to continue eating dog food. On the other side of the moment, Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson hurried over. We came at a bad time. Natasha Romanoff and Phil Coulson were speechless when they saw them hugging each other. Mr. Vice didn't expect you to be here too? Natasha Romanoff saw Levi's sitting beside him. Yes, I was invited over to help a megalomaniac. Levi's smiled and nodded. Megalomaniac? Okay, I'll admit it. 35. By this time Tony had already got the peppers and walked over, admitting he was a little cocky this time. If Levi's hadn't come to the rescue, I'm afraid he'd be in danger. Chapter 86. The Phoenix Force Awakens. The Dark Phoenix. Thank you, Tony said solemnly to Levi's. Hearing this thank you, Levi's nodded with satisfaction. It's almost the same, but don't forget what you promised me. What did I promise? Tony asked with selective amnesia. Levi's narrowed his eyes and said, did you forget that you said I promise anything on the phone? 35. Seeing this, Tony felt a sense of danger for no reason, so he nodded decisively. Definitely remember. That's good. Levi's big smile resumed. At this time Phil Coulson came to Tony and said, Tony, the mastermind behind our investigation is Ivan Vanke, but we didn't catch him, and we were ready to restart those steel soldiers. Was also inexplicably blocked. Hearing what he said, Tony turned his head and gave Levi's a 497 look at each other. I don't think you need to investigate. Ivan Vanke has just died under the self-destruction of those steel soldiers. What? Are those explosions just now? Phil Coulson was a little surprised. That's right. Tony nodded and then ignored him, turning around and looking for Pepper. Levi's on the side also planned to leave, but he suddenly remembered that he hadn't signed in today. Going back and signing in, or maybe signing in on Phil Coulson. The last time he signed in on Natasha Romanoff, he got a very powerful super ability Psychic Cannonball, which also made him not all the targets for signing in mutants. Ordinary people can also sign in and get good things. Definitely, this common man is limited to important supporting roles. The average passerby is definitely not going to do it, although Levi's has not tried it, but he is very sure of it. Thinking of this, he checked in directly to Phil Coulson. Ding. Did the host sign in to Phil Coulson agent? Sign in, 35. Ding. Sign in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Affinity, with 100 experience points. Affinity, 35. What kind of super ability is this? Levi's are a little confused, but literally, it should be a super ability that has an affinity for people. Thinking of this, he ignored this super ability. Phil Coulson agent, and Miss Natasha Romanoff. Then see you next time. Levi's called Raw, then disappeared in front of the two in an instant. Back to the Mutant Academy. Levi's was acutely aware that something was wrong with the atmosphere of the Academy. Scanned it telepathically and found that the X-Men were all gathered in the war room, and even Professor X was there. After handing him the leadership of the X-Men, Professor X rarely got involved in X-Men affairs. So what's going on here? Without thinking much, he directly used the space move to come to the combat conference room. What happened? Why is everyone here? Levi's looked at everyone suspiciously and asked, "You're finally back. Why can't your phone get through?" "Great, you're finally back." Seeing his sudden appearance, several people were a little excited, and before they knew it, Levi's had become the backbone of the X-Men. What happened to the professor? Levi's asked suspiciously when he came to Professor X. "That's it, the boy Jean." Professor X slowly explained the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that in the afternoon, Jean Grey and Cyclops were arranging training for Iceman and the others. However, Jean Grey suddenly broke out with the power of the Phoenix and injured several people. Cyclops wanted to stop Jean Grey, but was severely injured instead. When Kin woke up and found that she had hurt Cyclops, she felt very guilty. She thought that as long as she was still in the academy, she would definitely hurt other people, so it just flew away. After understanding what happened, Levi's frowned. It seems that the power of the Phoenix is finally unstoppable. This was both within his expectations and beyond his expectations. He had thought that the power of the Phoenix would explode sooner or later, but he did not expect it to be so fast. The original plan was to find a way to get the Phoenix power out of Jean Grey's body after becoming a 5th-level mutant. Now it's troublesome. Thinking of this, he looked at the experience points he needed to get to LV5, and found that he only needed 200 experience points to successfully become LV5. As long as he becomes a 5th-level mutant, he is sure to suppress the power of the Phoenix. However, he has already signed in today, which means that it will take 2 days to complete. But in the past 2 days, God knows what will happen to Jean Grey. If she completely turns into a Dark Phoenix, then destroying the world will only be a snap of her fingers. What should we do now? Storm asked anxiously. We have to bring the piano back. Actually, Professor X couldn't help but sigh in half. Professor, is there anything you haven't told me? Levi's asked suspiciously. It's about Kin's background. Levi's couldn't help frowning when he heard this. There seemed to be 2 settings for Jean's life experience, and he was not sure which one was. One of them was Jean Grey's childhood car accident, which turned on her X-gene to become a mutant, and the power of the Phoenix quietly entered her body at this time. And young Jean could not control this powerful force. Her parents approached Professor X, hoping he could teach her how to control ability. The other version is that when Kin was a child, he suddenly awakened the mutant super ability, causing a car accident for a family of 3. When Jin woke up, the family was taken away by Professor X, who told her that her parents had died in the car accident. But in fact, this is nothing more than a white lie from Professor X. The truth is that her parents abandoned her because of her ability. These 2 kinds of life experiences, the former is the setting of the normal version 4.1, and the latter is the setting of the Dark Phoenix version. I deceived Kin. In fact, his parents didn't die, and I didn't tell her the truth about the car accident. Professor X sighed and then slowly told the mystery of Kin's life experience. So it is. After listening to Professor X's narration, Polaris felt a little bit, because they were both abandoned by their parents. Definitely, there are still many such mutants who were abandoned by their parents because of the sudden awakening of super ability. Things were a little different with Polaris. Magneto still cared about her daughter, after all. And Jean Grey's parents abandoned Jean as their daughter because they were very afraid of the power of Kin. In other words, the current situation is set by the Dark Phoenix. Levi's folded his hands on his chest and touched his chin, thinking. Chapter 87 The Powerful Black Phoenix. We must save Jin, Logan said anxiously. Don't worry, by the way, how's Mr. Scott's injury? Levi's asked suddenly. Hearing this question, the expressions of several people were a little heavy. Scott was badly injured and hasn't woken up until now, Storm said solemnly. I see. Don't worry about Mr. Kin, I'll go see Mr. Scott first. Levi's was not in a hurry to find the piano. And if Cyclops died because of his injuries, it would be troublesome. Jean may even destroy the world directly because of this. The crowd did not object. After a while they came to the ward. Levi's checked Cyclops' injuries and found that there were no scars on the surface, but a large number of cells in his body were dead. This is because of exposure to the power of the Phoenix. Without treatment, Cyclops may never wake up. Fortunately, he was able to repair the cellular level. Without further ado, he used molecular manipulation to begin repairing Cyclops' cells. After a while, "How's it going?" Storm asked anxiously. "It's all right, Mr. Scott will wake up soon." 35 Levi's looked at everyone and smiled. Hearing his words, everyone felt relieved. As predicted, in just a moment, Cyclops woke up. "Where's Kin? How is she?" Cyclops, who had just woken up, glanced around for a week, but didn't see Kin. "Scott, don't worry, Jean has left the academy, but she's not in any danger at the moment." Storm stepped forward and held down the excited Cyclops. Explained. "Then let's go get her back." Cyclops disregarded Storm's obstruction and got up from the hospital bed. Seeing this, Levi said helplessly, "Teacher Olo, let him be with him." "But his body is just recovering." Storm frowned. "I'm very good now." Cyclops didn't care about his own safety at all. "Then everyone get ready and let's go." Levi's looked at everyone and said, "You must find Kin as soon as possible, otherwise God knows if Kin will go berserk after being stimulated." If a large number of civilians are killed at that time, SHIELD may not be able to explain it. The crowd had no opinion. Soon they were all dressed and ready to go to the X-Men in the basement. "Wait a minute. Don't send out the X-Fighters. Everyone just get close." Levi's disliked the fact that the X-Fighter was too slow, and planned to use the space move to take everyone directly to Jean Grey's location. "Alright then. It seems that there will be fewer opportunities to use X-Fighters in the future," Cyclops said regretfully. "Vice, I have to go to this time, because of my reasons. The piano has become like this." At this time, Professor X also followed. Levi's frowned. He actually didn't agree with Professor X going. If Jean found out that Professor X had lied to her for so many years, she might lose control of her emotions. But since Professor X said so, he could only agree. "Then the professor will come with us." Saying that, he took the initiative to grab Professor X's shoulder. Then Storm, Cyclops, Logan, and Polaris all approached and put their hands on his shoulders. Immediately after Levi's used the space to move, several people disappeared in the room in an instant. Sunset, in a quiet town. A group of people suddenly appeared here. "Are you sure Jean is in this town?" Cyclops asked, looking around. "This is indeed where Jean's parents live. Professor X is still very familiar with this place. Don't worry, Teacher Kin is inside, but don't be impulsive." Levi's looked at Cyclops. At this moment, Jean Grey walked out of the house. She looked at everyone with a bad look and said, "You shouldn't be here." "Why, Kin, we are here to pick you up," Professor X said sincerely. However, Kin was even more excited. "I don't have a home at all. It's all thanks to you." Kin stubbornly believed that Professor X had deceived her. "Kin, your father was unable to support you at that time, so we will take you in." Jean interrupted Professor X's words and said angrily, "But you said that my father is dead. You are just using me for my strength." "No, Kin, that's not the case." Professor X couldn't argue. After all, he really deceived Kin. But to say that for her strength, this is completely impossible. Seeing that the explanation couldn't make sense, Professor X could only let Cyclops on the side. Cyclops couldn't bear it anymore. He stepped forward to look at Kin and said, "Kin, come back. We can help you." "No. He lied to me, Scott. He's full of lies." Jean Grey obviously didn't trust Professor X anymore. "Jean, come back to me. Let's investigate this matter together. Remember? You said you would come back to me forever," Cyclops said a little excitedly. Wolverine behind him felt a little uncomfortable hearing this. After Kin heard his words, her mood was obviously much calmer. Levi's thinks that perhaps relying on mouth escape can appease Kin. Maybe the original book was stimulated by police cars at this time, so Kin was completely run away. And now 497 Levi's has already brought the police car under control. "Jin, come back to me." Cyclops' tone was very gentle, as he kept getting closer. However, just after Cyclops approached Kin, a powerful energy suddenly burst out from Kin's body. Cyclops was blown away in an instant. "I am Phoenix," Kin screamed, obviously different from the previous voice. Oops, could it be that the Dark Phoenix has awakened? After Levi's caught the flying Cyclops, he frowned at Jean Grey. Is the worst outcome yet to come? At this time, Logan approached the past and seemed to try to awaken Kin's will. "Kin, you can't shoot at us. Go back with us if you are obedient." However, Kin can even start with Cyclops, a real boyfriend, not to mention that he is only ambiguous with Logan. I saw Kin pushing with one hand, and the next moment Logan was blasted out. "Everyone, be careful. The current piano teacher may not be the one we know," Levi's reminded with a serious expression. The Kin in front of her was already under the control of the Black Phoenix. At this moment, the Black Phoenix waved one hand, and a powerful energy shock spread out. In an instant, the earth cracked, and the ground was swept up by a layer of land. Chapter 88 All the Means, the battle against the Dark Phoenix. At a critical juncture, Levi's appeared in front of everyone and stomped heavily. Go back to me. Use the vector operation to change the direction of the underground energy, and the next moment the ground splits and swept forward. From a distance, the streets on both sides were like two huge amounts of waves, slapping together. Boom. For a while, the gravel was flying, and the smoke and dust were everywhere. Make it difficult to see the situation. Fortunately, Dark Phoenix's attack was blocked by Levi's. Polaris was a little suspicious. Is this destructive battle in front of him a battle of 5th level mutants? If Levi's knew what she was thinking, she would definitely shake her head in denial. The scene just now looked huge, but the Black Phoenix always had the influence of Kin's memory, so it didn't make such an effort at all. Otherwise, he thinks that his current self is unstoppable. Don't come near me again. At this moment, the Black Phoenix floating in midair roared and wanted to leave. Can't let her go, Cyclops said anxiously. Professor X shouted. When Levi's heard the words, he used the vector operation to fly into the sky in an instant, blocking the way of the Dark Phoenix. You again. The Dark Phoenix finally recognized that he was the one who beat him back last time, and when she pushed with one hand, a powerful red energy blasted towards him in an instant. What about the power of the Phoenix? See if I call you back. Levi's used the vector operation with all his strength to punch out, and the power of the Phoenix was directly blown away by this punch. Seeing this, the Black Phoenix seemed to feel that he was being provoked, and a stronger Phoenix force condensed into a Flame Phoenix and flew towards him. Wherever the Flame Phoenix went, the houses on the ground were instantly destroyed, like the burnt carbon deposits. Be careful, Vice. Seeing this terrifying scene, Polaris shouted anxiously. Wow, is that Levi's had to take this trick seriously. However, this time he did not use the vector operation, but took the initiative to face the Flame Phoenix. Energy absorption. I saw that his whole body was bathed in the power of the Phoenix, and from the outside it looked like he was being burned by the flames of the Phoenix. Polaris' pupils shrank when he saw this scene, and he just stepped forward, but was stopped by Storm. Lorna, don't be impulsive, it will be fine. Trust, he must be able to create miracles, Professor X said in a deep voice. It was at this time the Phoenix flame in the sky changed. I saw that the flame was like a vortex, sucking all the surrounding flames into it, finally revealing Levi's stature. What a mighty force! After using energy absorption to absorb the huge Phoenix power, even he felt a little panic in his body. And under the blessing of this powerful force, his strength has been infinitely close to the 5th level mutant. It's my turn now. Levi's looked at the Dark Phoenix, and the corner of his mouth rose slightly, then he waved his hand, and dozens of light balls appeared behind him. Immediately after, beams of light emerged from these spheres of light. Atomic collapse. The power of this move is very powerful, and whatever is hit will be destroyed at the atomic level. From a distance, I saw dozens of white rays of light shot towards the Black Phoenix. What the hell is this ability? Cyclops and Storm below were a little stunned when they saw the white beam. It's an ability that Vice has never used, but it must be very powerful in this situation. 99 North Star frowned. At the same time, the beam of light came to the Dark Phoenix in the blink of an eye. Seemingly feeling the danger, the Black Phoenix waved out his hands, and in an instant another powerful Phoenix force blasted out. Dozens of beams of atomic collapse hit the power of the Phoenix, not even an inch. Even the atomic collapse is useless. Levi's looked solemn. Then try this trick. 35. As he said that, he grabbed lightly in the direction of the Black Phoenix with one hand, and in an instant, the surrounding space turned out to be like a mirror turned upside down, showing the color of tinfoil. Space reverse. This was the first time he used this move, because it was too dangerous. From a space-level attack, General Means simply cannot defend against it. It can be said that in terms of power, this move is also the top super ability in his hands. Kaka. The space around the Black Phoenix was all reversed, and then it kept pressing towards the center. Levi stared at the Dark Phoenix tightly. If she couldn't stop this move, then he could only withdraw ability. However, his worries were completely superfluous. I saw the Black Phoenix looking at the surrounding space that was constantly being reversed, and a powerful Phoenix power erupted directly from the whole body. The space that was reversed around was actually shaken away in an instant. Sure enough, it's not that easy. 35. Although Levi's had long guessed that this trick might not work against the Dark Phoenix, it was still a bit shocking to be cracked so easily. Phoenix. The Black Phoenix screamed suddenly, and the next moment, the endless power of the Red Phoenix poured out, and the entire sky was dyed red in an instant. This terrifying energy has already attracted Nick Fury on the helicarrier. How about Phil Coulson? Did you find out what's going on? 35. It's like this terrifying energy jamming, making it impossible for the satellites to see the ground. So Nick Fury had to send Phil Coulson to investigate. Director, I've seen it. It's, what? That kid? What the hell is he doing? 55. When Nick Fury heard this, Levi's was startled, followed by a headache. According to their energy detection, this energy is enough to destroy the whole of New York. In other words, if you are not careful, the whole of New York will be ruined. Director, I only saw Dow's and another woman. If I remember correctly, that woman should also be from the Mutant Academy. Lee's, called Jean Grey, who is the teacher of the academy. Phil Coulson continued. Continued report. Damn, why does this happen? Now I can only pray that they can solve it by themselves. Nick Fury walked around the office with a sore face. At the same time, seeing that the power of the Phoenix constantly erupted in the Dark Phoenix, Levi's secretly said that it was not good. If she continues to break out like this, I am afraid that everything around her will be destroyed. Go back to me. 99. Levi's shouted angrily and immediately came to the Phoenix Force, and slammed it out with a free punch. At this moment, the Vector operation was operated to the extreme, and at the same time, his superbrain was also frantically calculating every direction of energy. In an instant, the Phoenix power of the Black Phoenix actually showed signs of shrinking. Levi's was happy when he saw this, and then he suppressed the power of the Phoenix with all his strength and let them return to Jean Grey's body. Chapter 89. The solution to the Dark Phoenix. Did it work? Cyclops was a little surprised to see this. Great. Storm was also a little excited. This kid has done a good job. Logan also praised. Yet at this time, when the Phoenix Force returned to Jean Grey's body, an invisible shockwave caught Levi's body by surprise and was blasted out. Jean Grey looked at Levi's, then at Cyclops and others on the ground, and then flew away with a complicated expression. And Levi's smashed directly into the ground. Polaris ran over anxiously. Then Storm and Logan followed suit. When everyone came to a deep pit, they saw Levi's crawling out of the deep pit. Vice, are you alright? Polaris quickly grabbed his hand and pulled him out of the pit. Cough cough tilde. I'm fine. Levi's waved his hand. Fortunately, his Vector operation can automatically protect him. Otherwise, even he would be choked up just now. Vice, are you really okay? Professor X asked with concern. Well, don't worry, Professor. I'm fine. In fact, Teacher Kin has recovered some of his consciousness at that moment. Otherwise, it would not be so easy to suppress the power of the Phoenix. Levi's also wanted to understand just now that without the cooperation of Jean Grey 500, it was impossible to suppress the power of the Phoenix just now. It was also thanks to that moment that Jean Grey was sober enough to come. Otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. At the same time, he was also a little too confident. With his current LV4 strength, it would be a fool's errand to defeat the Dark Phoenix. After all, that is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. What should we do now? Polaris asked with a frown. This question is also on everyone's mind. I can only go back and discuss the countermeasures. It is obviously not a wise move to continue to stimulate Teacher Kin. Levi said solemnly, before thinking of a solution. It is best not to continue to stimulate Kin, otherwise no one can stop Dark Phoenix. Everyone nodded when they heard the words, and there was no better way at present. Just then, the phone on him suddenly rang. Levi's picked it up and saw that it was Nick Fury calling, and it seemed he already knew what was going on here. This is not surprising. What's the matter with you, Chief? I want to know what happened. 35. Levi's was not surprised to hear that. It's just a mutant family affair, and I'll fix it. You said you would solve it? But now the whole town is almost destroyed by you. Nick Fury couldn't hold back the anger in his heart. The town was destroyed? Director Nick Fury, you heard clearly. If this matter is not handled properly, the whole world may be destroyed. Levi sneered. It's just that the town was destroyed, and he just observed it using telepathy. At the beginning of the battle, the few residents of the town were controlled by Professor X to leave, including Jean's parents. So the destruction of the town is already the best outcome. What? When Fury heard his words, his scalp tingled in shock. I thought it would be a terrible thing to destroy the entire New York with the energy just now, but I didn't expect it to be able to destroy the world. This is no joke. Just kidding? If Director Nick Fury you thought you were kidding, deal with it yourself. Hearing that he was ready to quit, Fury immediately relented. Vice, only you can solve this matter. If you need anything, just say it. We SHIELD will definitely settle it for you. If Levi's can't solve it, who can? Let's not talk about whether it can destroy the world. Even destroying the whole of New York is not his responsibility. Fury was even wondering whether to drive the helicarrier away first so they would be safe even if New York was destroyed. In the end, this matter is also an internal matter of our mutants. Don't worry, we will solve it, but this destroyed town, Xib, leave it to us. Fury instantly understood the meaning of his words, and immediately patted his chest to give it to him. Then Trouble Director Nick Fury, 35 Levi's hung up. SHIELD. Storm wondered. Yes, there will be people from SHIELD here to deal with it later. Let's go back first. Everyone heard the words and did not have an opinion. Back to the Mutant Academy. In the battle room, everyone was silent. They really couldn't think of a good way to get Kin back. In fact, Levi's had a solution in mind for a long time, and that was to wait until he became a 5th level mutant before going to Kin. The gap between the 4th level mutants and the 5th level mutants is simply too great. As long as he becomes a 5th level mutant, even the Dark Phoenix has the power to fight. It's a pity that it takes 2 days, and the sign-in fails. If there is any problem with the piano in the past 2 days, It will be troublesome. Vice, have you thought of anything? Cyclops really had no choice but to ask him. Storm and Logan also looked at him. Well, I do have a way, but it will take 2 days. 39 Levi spoke his mind. 2 days? Everyone frowned. The change in 2 days was too great, and no one knew what would happen. I believe in Vice, and that's the only way out. 99. Polaris is very convinced of his plan. The others were silent but couldn't think of a better way. That's the only way. Are you going to do this in 2 days? Storm asked suspiciously. My strength will become very strong in 2 days, and I will have the confidence to directly suppress the power of the Phoenix. 35 Levi's is confident. When everyone heard the words, they looked at each other in dismay. The power of the Phoenix power is obvious to all today. But Levi's actually said that in 2 days, it will become strong enough to defeat the power of the Phoenix. If it was someone else who said this, they would definitely not believe it. But Levi's is different because they still don't know how much super ability Levi's has, and where is his upper limit. After the meeting, Levi's thought about it for a while, and it would not be okay to just leave the piano outside, and it must be monitored, and also need to avoid other people conflict with her. It should be fine for 2 days. Thinking of this, he called Nick Fury directly and explained his request. Fury frowned and said, I have always sent people to watch, but the people who sent them fainted without any exception. Hearing this, Levi's suddenly remembered that Jean Grey has a very strong telepathy. If you approach with purpose, you will definitely be discovered. Chapter 90 The Alien Coveting the Power of the Phoenix. In this way, people who want to arrange contact with Jean Grey may not be able to. Forget it. Don't send people to monitor. I'll arrange this myself. Levi's hung up the phone and then used electromagnetic waves to monitor Jen's area over the internet. This is the only way to make arrangements for now. Vice, what are you thinking about? Clarice entered the room and saw him lying on the sofa frowning and thinking. Then she sat next to Levi's and gently massaged his shoulders. Levi's took her hand and smiled slightly. I'm thinking about how to make Teacher Kin come back. 55. Is there a way? Clarice asked curiously. At present, most of the students don't know about it, and Clarice also learned about it from the North Star. Haha Tilda, don't worry, I have already figured out a way to bring Teacher Kin back soon. Levi stretched his arms around Clarice's waist and smiled confidently. I hadn't noticed it just now, but I didn't expect that Clarice was actually wearing purple pajamas, and the hazy curves made people imagine. Good. Go to the room and wait for me. Clarice nodded softly, then went back to the room. Levi's was about to take a shower, when Polaris came to the room. Vice, have you seen Clarice? I searched for a long time but couldn't find her, Polaris asked suspiciously. She ''s ... in the room. Levi's pointed to the room. Oh, Polaris agreed, and then walked towards the room. Levi's eyes lit up slightly when he saw this, and then he took a quick shower and returned to the room. In the room, Lorna and Clarice chatted happily, and the smiles on their faces never stopped. This made him sigh involuntarily. Telepathy is really useful. It was a great peace of mind to let the two women accept each other in a subtle way, and let them love only him forever. The next day, the X-Men waited with a heavy heart, and Levi's came to the underground research room to chat with Sophie and Phoebe for a while. After all, he promised to accompany them last time. Definitely, the main purpose of his coming here is not to chat with the two sisters, but to sign in on Ivan Vanko. Although Ivan Vanko is only a small supporting role, he will not give super ability that is too rubbish. Ding. Did the host sign into Ivan Vanko? Sign in. Ding. Sign in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Flexibility, with 100 experience points. When he saw the name of this ability, he suddenly became a little confused. How could he feel that this ability has a different effect and works in the same way? Definitely, this ability is definitely not for that kind of thing. It can make your hands, feet or neck stretch freely, just like rubber fruit. Marvel version of Rubber Man? Levi's was speechless, but unexpectedly gave this seemingly useless ability. Forget it, experience points are enough anyway. In this case, he only needs to sign in successfully one more time. However, things didn't seem to go as smoothly as he thought. Time comes tonight. Just as Levi's was bored watching TV, Cyclops burst in. What's wrong? Someone approached Jin. Cyclops explained hastily. After listening to the explanation, Levi's understood. Previously, he controlled all the surveillance in the area where Jin was located through electromagnetic waves, and then let Cyclops and Storm be responsible for keeping an eye on Jin. And just now, a white-haired woman approached Kin. Then Kin was taken away by the white-haired woman. Why did you tell me this now? Levi's frowned. He suddenly remembered that this white-haired woman should be the alien race Debari. Once the planet of the Debari was destroyed by the power of the Phoenix wandering in the universe, the remaining Debari have been pursuing this powerful force since then. They finally found this place after the power of the Phoenix broke out some time ago. It was also his fault that he had been thinking about how to defeat the power of the Phoenix, but had forgotten about these greedy guys being able to travel freely in the universe. The ability of these Debari people should not be underestimated, and they will definitely not be as wasteful as in the movie. Cyclops was embarrassed to hear his question. We thought at first that the white-haired woman was just chatting by chance, but we didn't expect kin to follow them. Seeking flowers. Levi's was a little helpless to hear his words, but he was also responsible for this. Let everyone be prepared. The conspiracy of those people must not be allowed to succeed. Cyclops was a little puzzled when he heard the words, but he didn't ask much. With his notice, Storm and Wolverine and Polaris were all ready soon. Let me explain briefly. Levi's explained, there are aliens who approach Teacher Kin and want to get the power of the Phoenix in her body. This time our mission is to stop these aliens. Okay, get ready to go. After hearing this explanation, Cyclops and Logan became more confused, but they didn't ask any more questions. Levi's used electromagnetic waves to control the surveillance in the area where Kin was, and soon found the villain area where the white-haired woman took Kin to. Immediately afterwards, he used space to move and disappeared into the academy with a group of people. When they reappeared, they were already on a street. In front of them was the place where the white-haired woman was carrying the piano. It's not good to start here. Storm frowned as he looked at the crowded street. Maybe you need help. At this time, Phil Coulson, who had been monitoring the place, stepped aside. Phil Coulson, why does it feel like you're everywhere? Levi's couldn't complain. I don't want to come either. God knows today is my hard-working vacation time, and as a result. Okay, let someone block off the street first, and then quickly evacuate the crowd. The sooner the better. Levi's didn't bother to listen to his complaints. Okay then. Phil Coulson shrugged helplessly, then went down to arrange the evacuation of the crowd. Soon all the people around were evacuated. At this moment, more than 10 people came out of the villa, men, women and children. You are the Debari people. Levi's looked at these people with a slightly narrowed eye. You actually know us? The Debari were a little surprised, but they didn't expect that there were people who knew them on this planet. Cyclops and Storm are also very confused about this. Chapter 91 Debari's strength should not be underestimated. Levi's didn't intend to explain to these Debaris. Go ahead, there's nothing to say. These aliens are not what they were originally. They killed a lot of humans. Hearing that these aliens killed a lot of human beings, several people were also a little angry. Do you need our help? Phil Coulson, who was not far away, ran over again. You? He turned his head to look at the heavily armed agent squad and shook his head. He didn't think these toys could hurt them. You must know that the Debari people can travel through the universe at will. This may be their ability, but being able to travel through the universe, their physical strength can be said to be absolutely very hard. Everyone be careful. These aliens are not easy to deal with. Levi's reminded everyone. Got it. Storm nodded and then his eyes began to turn white with 5 zeros. Thunder suddenly sounded in the sky, and there was also a strong wind around him. The agents who had planned to help were a little unstable in this harsh environment. Phil Coulson saw this and hurriedly retreated into the distance with the people. The first to attack was Cyclops, who was seen with one hand on his glasses. Immediately afterwards, a red shockwave hit one of the Debari. Hit by the shockwave, the Debari was instantly knocked out and smashed into the wall. However, the Debari didn't seem to be seriously injured, and stood up in an instant, patted his clothes and seemed to be completely fine. This scene shocked several people. Hey, Scott, have you maxed out your shockwave? Storm couldn't believe Cyclops' attack was useless against the aliens. Not yet, but it's getting close, Cyclops replied. Although the shockwave just now was not the maximum power, it was almost the same. But I didn't expect that these aliens were not injured. Sure enough, Levi's frowned, and it seemed that he was right in guessing that the bodies of these debris were indeed very powerful. At this time, Polaris on the side also shot, and when she waved her hand, the vehicle on the side was instantly thrown by the magnetic manipulator. Boom! To his astonishment, the vehicle thrown over was caught by one of the Debari. Not only is the body very hard, but also the strength is very strong. Levi's frowned. At the same time, the thunderbolt of Storm on the other side also fell from the sky. However, these Debarians had no intention of dodging in the face of lightning, and the lightning hit them only to damage their disguise. But it took a moment for them to recover. And this powerful restoration ability, Cyclops said solemnly. At the same time, Logan also rushed in front of a Debari and stabbed it with a paw. As expected of adamantium, it pierced the Debari's chest with ease. It's just that such an injury is like a scratch to the Debari, and it heals in an instant. Logan, who was caught off guard, was also thrown out with a punch. So far, none of the four's attacks have been effective against the aliens. Although they are only third-level mutants, their attacks cannot even be underestimated by Magneto. I am afraid that only the haters or the Hulk can completely ignore their attacks like these Debari. It can be seen that these Debari people don't want to be so weak in the movie at all. After all, they are a race that can travel through the universe. As expected of the few alien races left, ability is really powerful. Levi's looked at these Debari people with admiration, and then said to the 3 North Stars beside him, "You geese stand back a little, then let me try." The 4 of them nodded when they heard the words, and then backed out. The body is extremely hard, and the recovery ability is extremely strong, then try the blow from the atomic level. 99. After he finished speaking, he saw dozens of light balls suddenly appear beside him. It's that super ability. Phil Coulson, who was not far away, suddenly shrank his pupils when he saw this scene. According to the analysis of SHIELD, they learned that the light sphere released by Levi's is the state of electrons between waves and particles, but the electron beams are all electron beams that form the light cannon. Due to limited technology, they were completely unable to resolve the principle of this electron beam. They even called Tony over for this, but they didn't get a reasonable explanation. In Tony's words, this is at least a principle beyond the current 50 years of technology to explain. And the targets hit by this electron beam will undoubtedly be destroyed. As predicted, the moment these beams were shot out, the bodies of all Debari were instantly pierced. However, what is surprising is that the body that was pierced recovered in a short time. What a terrifying resilience! Polaris exclaimed raw in surprise. At the same time, perhaps it was the attack just now that made these debris aware of the danger, and they were no longer passively beaten, and all rushed towards Levi's. Isn't it too late to rush over now? 99. Levi sneered, and the light ball next to him shot out the atomic collapse beam again. PSST. One after another beam of light kept penetrating the Debari people, and some of them were directly shot in the head that could not be avoided. Even if the resilience is strong, the brain is the weak point. In an instant, the Debari lost more than half. This made the other Debarians very angry. After all, there were only so many debris left, and this time, half of them were wiped out. The rest of the Debari were so fast that they came to him in an instant. So fast, Levi's pupils shrank, which he should have thought long ago. Since these Debari people can travel in the universe, whether it is ability or any ability, they must be very fast. Otherwise, it is impossible to travel freely in the universe. Definitely, maybe they have spaceships too. But that's not what Levi's needs to consider. In the face of several Debari who were close at hand, he threw a punch. Bang bang bang. When several Debari people came into contact with him, they were ejected instantly. The Debari on the 4.1 side was the worst. He was directly hit in the head by Levi's, and it seemed that he would not be able to recover for a while. The so-called Debari are nothing more than that. Levi's shook his head with disdain. It was at this time. Look, 99. Polaris pointed to the villa behind Debari, and saw that the entire villa began to glow red. When Levi's looked up, he was shocked. It was bad. It seemed that the leader of the Debari people, UK, had already begun to absorb the power of the Phoenix from Teacher Kin. Thinking of this, he didn't care about the other Debari people, and rushed directly towards the villa. However, the remaining Debari stood in front of him again. Get away from me. 9. Levi's let out a low growl and rammed directly at the debris. In an instant, all the Debari were knocked out. Chapter 92 Breakthrough. Become a level 5 mutant. Enter the villa lobby. Sure enough, the leader of the Debari people, UK, was absorbing the power of the Phoenix from Jean Grey. A stream of red Phoenix power kept pouring into the body of the leader of the Debari people, UK, and she showed an expression of enjoyment. At this moment, Levi's eyes flashed red, and a red shockwave instantly hit the unsuspecting UK, blasting her out. Master Kin, are you alright? Levi's came to Jean Grey's side. However, it seemed that Jean Grey had fainted because of the power of the Phoenix being absorbed. At this time, Cyclops, Storm, Polaris, and Logan also dealt with the remaining Debari outside. Although their ability is hard to deal damage to Debari, they are still fine with a few injured Debari. Kintilda Cyclops came here anxiously, looking at the unconscious Kin suddenly a little anxious. What happened to Jean? Storm asked worriedly. Don't worry, she's just absorbed some Phoenix power by the Debari. Levi's 22 was not worried about Jean Grey's condition. He stood up and looked into the warehouse where UK was blasted away. I saw Wook slowly climbed up from the ground. The injury on her body instantly recovered as before, and at the same time a red Phoenix power circulated around her. Seeing this, Levi's couldn't help frowning, and then said to Cyclops and the others beside him, you should take Teacher Kin and exit first. Be careful. Polaris looked at UK and knew that the opponent was very strong. It's fine. He smiled and nodded. Immediately after, the three left here with Jean Grey. Humans should be damned. UK walked towards Levi's with a cold face, and at the same time, the power of the fiery red Phoenix in his hand slammed towards him. Humphrey, this level of Phoenix power is simply too weak. 99. Levi's snorted disdainfully, followed by a punch. The surging power of the Phoenix was directly blown away by a punch. You will never understand the power of this force. Yukor was unmoved. I saw her flying into the air, and the powerful Phoenix force exploded instantly, and everything around her was destroyed silently. Levi's was a little surprised. I didn't expect that she would be able to burst out such a mighty Phoenix power. It seems that she has been inhaling a lot just now. However, compared to the power of the Phoenix in Kin Grey's body, it was still too small. And under the power of the Phoenix, The entire villa was destroyed by the power of the Phoenix. The three Cyclops who had just left were all horrified when they saw this scene. Vice. Polaris eagerly looked for Levi's figure. Where are they? 99. Cyclops looked up and saw Levi's in the sky. Polaris finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, in the sky. How stupid. Levi's looked at UK with a mocking expression. It is completely meaningless to explode the power of the Phoenix like this, and it will also increase the consumption of the power of the Phoenix in her body. The power of the Phoenix in her body was only absorbed temporarily, just like a rootless duckweed, using a little less. Humphrey, you never know how powerful this power is. UK is obviously still immersed in the power of the Phoenix and he is unable to extricate himself, thinking that he is invincible in the world. Little did she know that the power of the Phoenix she absorbed was only a drop in the bucket of the power of the Phoenix in the piano. Levi's shook his head disdainfully and said, "Let me wake you up." Atomic collapse. In an instant, several light balls appeared behind him, followed by several white light beams. It's useless. Wu calmly waved a Phoenix force in front of him during the interview. However, to her astonishment, the atomic collapse beam instantly shattered the power of the Phoenix, and then shot through her body. In an instant, there were a few more holes in Wu's body. "Do you really think you are the Dark Phoenix?" Levi said with a disdainful smile. The power of the Phoenix used by the Dark Phoenix, his atomic collapse beam, is impenetrable. However, UK is not a Dark Phoenix. It's over. Levi stretched out his hand with a flat face, and grabbed it lightly in the void. Space reversal. 99. I saw that the space where UK was located was all reversed. PSST. In an instant, UK was torn into pieces, and blood filled the ground. Too weak. 99. Levi's shook his head and turned to leave. Although UK had absorbed the power of the Phoenix, she was originally too weak to exert the power of the Phoenix at all. So he was killed without the slightest resistance in front of him. However, before he was happy for long, the power of the fiery red Phoenix erupted again in the other direction. The dazzling light directly turned the night into day. Levi's face changed greatly. Oops. It seems that the Dark Phoenix has not resolved. I thought that after being absorbed by UK, the Dark Phoenix would be able to calm down. It still seems that he is too naive. Without hesitation, use super high speed to instantly come to the North Star beside them. The four of them were shaken back by the power of the Phoenix released by Jean Grey just now, and they were not injured at all. Seeing him appear, the four of them were a little anxious. Vice, what should I do? The Phoenix power in Kin's body is out of control. Cyclops said anxiously. If it goes on like this, Kin really won't be able to come back. Logan said solemnly. Levi's looked closely at the Dark Phoenix in the sky. The super brain kept simulating the battle between the two, but without exception, he was killed. Is there really no way? Obviously, he only needs to sign in once to become a 5th level mutant, and his winning rate against the Dark Phoenix will be at least 500% to 60%. That's right. Sign in. What time is it? His question surprised everyone. It's already early morning. What's wrong? Polaris asked strangely. Is it morning? Upon hearing this news, a smile appeared on Levi's face. It's early morning, which means it's already the next day, so his check-in count has also been refreshed. Only need to sign in successfully once again, then you can become a 5th level mutant. Thinking of this, he looked at the Debari who was not far away. Ding. Did the host sign into the Debari? Yes. Yeah. Ding. Sign-in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 100 experience points of the super ability Adaptability. The so-called Adaptability is the ability to adapt to any environment, which is the unique ability of the Debari. It is this ability that allows them to survive even in a vacuum environment. In short, it is a good super ability. Definitely, the most important thing is that he finally upgraded. At the moment of becoming a 5th level mutant, Levi's involuntarily flew into the sky. Immediately afterwards, there was a sudden flash of lightning and thunder in the sky, a scorching sun-like flame for a while, and a biting cold wind freezing the earth for a while. Immediately afterwards, cracks appeared in the surrounding space, and were then repaired by mysterious power. This terrifying vision is like the end of the world. Chapter 93 Crazy absorption of the power of the Phoenix. At this moment, all of Levi's super abilities are evolving. Seeing this astonishing scene, Storm and the others were a little shocked. They didn't know what happened to Levi's. What the hell happened to it? Suddenly became like this? 35 Storm looked worried. I don't know. Could it be made by Kin? Logan said and turned his gaze to Kin, who was bursting with the power of the Phoenix on the other side. Have you forgotten what Vice said before? Polaris suddenly remembered what Levi's said before. What? Cyclops wondered. Storm suddenly realized, Vice said before that it only takes 2 days for him to become stronger. 99. And Vice asked the time just now, and now it is indeed the second day. Speaking of this, the North Star's eyes are getting brighter and brighter. Good guy, I knew he wouldn't let us down. Logan looked at Levi's in the sky, in shock and admiration. I believe that he will be able to succeed. Polaris stared at the sky closely, and he was full of confidence in him. It was at this time. Levi's upgrade is finally complete. Host, Levi's super ability, vector operation, space movement, frozen control, flame control, energy absorption, electromagnetic force, evolution, telepathy, super infrasound, space reversal, atomic collapse, stealth, molecular manipulation, dragon incarnation, super brain, weather control, vibration, end elemental matter, transmigration, mechanical heart, ionization, illusion, perspective, psychic cannonball, super speed regeneration, super speed, affinity, flexible, adaptability, super ability level, LV.5, level 5 mutants, experience value, 0-100,000. Feeling the power in his body, Levi's heart beats only to feel that he can exert a powerful force with every gesture. From the 4th level mutant to the 5th level mutant, it is a qualitative change, and the gap between the two is really huge. It can be said that at the moment, he can easily defeat the previous self with the touch of a finger. At the same time, after upgrading to LV5, the experience points required to upgrade to LV6 also appeared, and it only takes 100,000 experience points to upgrade to LV6. If the sign-in is successful once a day, that means it will take 1,000 days, or about 3 years. It seems to take a long time, but that is LV6. It is completely unimaginable to what extent it is possible to touch the realm of God with a non-God body. But it's still too long to wait for that day. Maybe there is an opportunity to make myself stronger in advance. With that said, Levi's looked at the Dark Phoenix not far away. There is a way to make himself stronger ahead of time, and that is to absorb the power of the Phoenix in King Gray's body. After being upgraded to LV5, his energy absorption has also become stronger, not only able to store energy for a short period of time. If you can absorb the power of the Phoenix for your own use. Thinking of this, Levi's eyes became hot. On the other side, the Dark Phoenix seemed to sense his gaze, and the power of the Phoenix in the sky suddenly became restless. "It's you again, 35. Dark Phoenix looked at Levi's with anger in his eyes, and the man in front of him had stopped him several times. If it wasn't for Jean Grey's will, she would have killed this hateful human long ago. "That's right, it's me again. This time I'll get rid of you completely." Levi's mouth curled slightly, revealing a confident smile. The Dark Phoenix became even more angry when he heard the words, and without saying a word, he raised his hand and waved the power of the Phoenix in the sky. The entire night sky was illuminated by the flames of the Phoenix. Seeing this, Levi's couldn't help shaking his head and said, "Maybe it was a little tricky to face this trick before, but it's useless for me now." As he spoke, he was already enveloped by the power of the Phoenix. However, he is not in a hurry. The vector operation of LV5 is much more powerful than before, such as the previous flame control or electromagnetic force, etc. In fact, vector operation can also be done. After all, both are also a kind of vector. However, the flames released by vector manipulation before are not necessarily stronger than flame manipulation. But it is different now. After becoming LV5, the flame or electromagnetic force released by vector operation is no longer inferior to the single super ability. It can be said that a single super ability of vector operation has already dropped several super abilities. If it was before, it would still be difficult for him to use vector operations to deal with these Phoenix forces. But now he has been able to easily change the direction of the power of the Phoenix. Definitely, he did not use vector manipulation to change the direction of the Phoenix force. His original purpose was to absorb the Phoenix force. Now that the power of the Phoenix came to his door, he had no reason to refuse. The next moment, energy absorption has been opened to the maximum. I saw that the power of the Phoenix around Levi's was like a vortex, constantly pouring into his body. This trick again? 99. Seeing that he dared to absorb his own Phoenix power, the Black Phoenix was instantly furious, and then she burst out with a more powerful Phoenix power. Black Phoenix couldn't believe that it couldn't kill him. Constantly, the power of the Phoenix poured into the body, and Levi's at the moment also enjoyed the treatment of UK, the leader of the Debari. At the moment, he just felt good. The feeling that this power kept coming in was really good. The power of the Phoenix in the sky was washed clean in a moment, and Levi's also came to Jean Grey, hugging her and constantly absorbing the power of the Phoenix in her body. The Cyclops in the distance were a little happy to see this, and it seemed that Levi's had suppressed the Dark Phoenix. After a while, they became a little worried. If this absorption continues, will Can die? This is a question. Cyclops jumped in a hurry, but there was nothing he could do. In the sky, Dark Phoenix didn't care at first, but as Levi's kept absorbing, half of her Phoenix power was almost absorbed. Yet Levi's didn't mean to stop. Originally, she wanted to use the power of the Phoenix to blast this hateful man, but now she herself is a little panicked. "Stop for me." Dark Phoenix struggled in a panic, but no matter how she struggled, she couldn't leave Levi's embrace. Attacking him with the power of the Phoenix is just sending him energy. "Vice, stop now." "I'm fine now." Dark Phoenix's tone suddenly became gentle, just like the usual piano as a teacher. Levi's looked at her with some surprise. Is this handing over the control of the body to Jean Grey? No, it doesn't. He was keenly aware of the difference in the Black Phoenix, and what he just said was just to confuse him. Thinking of this, Levi's smiled and said, "Phoenix, don't struggle, Come into my body obediently. I will restore you to your strongest form. Chapter 94 The Phoenix Who Will Not Give In. In fact, he saw early in the morning that the power of the Phoenix in King Gray's body was not at its peak, and it could even be said that it was very weak. For countless epochs, the Phoenix Force has been attacked by Shi'ar. As a result, most of her power was scattered throughout the universe, leaving her very weak. It is very simple to replenish the power of the Phoenix, that is, energy absorbing. Any energy Phoenix power can be absorbed, such as the shockwave of Cyclops, the lightning of Storm, or it can directly devour the entire sun, even the galaxy, the universe and so on. Definitely, it would be great if the lost power of the Phoenix Force could be found. The power of the Phoenix in its heyday was extremely powerful and could easily destroy or create the universe. It has the ability to destroy, distort, modify, and restart reality at will, and its influence on reality can reach level universe, parallel level universe, and even multi-universe. It's terrifying. Definitely, to reach that level, the energy that needs to be absorbed is also very terrifying. At the same time, seeing that the Dark Phoenix could not deceive Levi's, he suddenly became furious. He even took the initiative to send the power of the Phoenix into his body, intending to blow him up. However, Levi's is not afraid at all. With the power of the Phoenix today, it is impossible to support him until the power of the Phoenix within the Black Phoenix is less than 1 level. I saw that the Dark Phoenix had abandoned Jean Grey directly, turned into a Flame Phoenix and took the initiative to get into Levi's body 500. The sudden influx of such a huge Phoenix force really caught Levi's off guard. The violent energy is constantly chaotic in the body. Fortunately, his body has become extremely powerful through super ability strengthening such as evolution and dragon incarnation, and the vector operation can control these energies very well. Immediately afterwards, under the control of the vector operation, the power of the Phoenix in his body gradually calmed down. Yet at this time, a flame figure suddenly appeared beside him, and this flame figure looked somewhat similar to Jean Grey. "You can't control me." The flame figure looked at him angrily. Levi's looked at the flame figure in front of him with great interest, and said, "You should be a phoenix." He really did not expect that the power of the Phoenix that was suppressed in the body could still come out, but it seemed that only a flame duplication appeared. "You are not the host recognized by Phoenix. You can never control me." Phoenix still said angrily. Levi's didn't care when he heard the words, "Phoenix, I will make you surrender, and now you should just be obedient." "This is impossible." Phoenix screamed, and then disappeared. After taking back the power of the Phoenix, he carefully felt his body and found that the power of the Phoenix did not mean to surrender. In this state, it is difficult to use the power of the Phoenix. It seems that in a short period of time, the power of the Phoenix cannot be used at will. Levi's was a little helpless. After all, it was a force from forcible plunder. However, he believed that as long as the Phoenix surrendered, he would be able to use the power of the Phoenix at will in the future. Back to the Cyclops and their side. "Vice, are you alright?" Polaris asked worriedly. "Ha, Tilda, don't worry, it's fine to continue dealing with the two of you tonight." Levi's laughed. Polaris couldn't help rolling his eyes when he heard the words. "Kin, what's wrong with you?" 33. At this time, Cyclops took Kin from his arms, and Raw kept calling, but Kin did not intend to wake up. "What happened to Jean?" Logan asked with a frown. "Well, don't worry, it should be the sequel of the power of the Phoenix being extracted, but it should be fine." Levi's observed for a while and found that the Phoenix did not hurt Jean Grey when he left, but left a fragment of Phoenix's power in her body. This Phoenix power fragment can allow her to use the Phoenix power perfectly, which is a blessing in disguise. Although this Phoenix power fragment is definitely not as strong as before, it can still allow her to exert a good strength. When everyone heard his words, they were relieved. At this moment, a fire in the sky flew towards this side and landed beside Levi's and the others. "Hey, Vice, you guys are making a lot of noise this time." Tony, the saucy bag, opened his mask and teased. In fact, he had been watching this side from a distance, but Nick Fury had warned him not to interfere. So this came after the battle was over. Levi's glanced at him and said, "It's a bit big, and it almost destroyed the world." "The world is destroyed?" "Ha ha ha, Vice, you are too good at joking." "How can I be destroyed in the world with Iron Man?" Tony laughed very arrogantly. Levi's was a little speechless when he heard the words, and he didn't bother to pay attention to his stinky fart. "It's been destroyed like this. I think tomorrow's newspaper will make everyone in New York crazy." Tony crossed his arms and looked at the destroyed villa area. Levi's looked at it and saw that the entire villa area was destroyed by the power of the Phoenix, and a deep circular pit appeared on the ground below. "If it is filled manually, I don't know how long it will take to fill up." He could even imagine Nick Fury having a headache. "Forget it, let's fix it." Levi's doesn't want to bother Shield either, or he doesn't know what Nick Fury is going to do for him. At that time, it is not easy to refuse. After all, eating people is short and soft. Thinking of this, he slightly mobilized some of the power of the Phoenix to flow over the destroyed place. A miraculous thing happened. I saw that the potholes on the ground where the power of the Phoenix passed were filled up in an instant, and the houses that were originally destroyed were restored. Flowers and trees grow in an instant. but in the blink of an eye, the villa area with a radius of 1,000 meters has all recovered. The people behind them were stunned to see this scene, and their hearts were stunned. How powerful is it to be able to restore all the destroyed buildings in an instant? Levi's nodded with satisfaction. The Phoenix Force not only possesses unparalleled destructive power, but also has unparalleled creativity and vitality. It's just to restore a house with a radius of 1,000 meters. It's not too easy. It's a miracle. No, I'm going to pay for this place, Tony muttered. After speaking, he actually called wuxiap chili, which was really speechless. Not far away, Phil Coulson also walked over with a stunned look on his face. Say you are God. 35. Phil Coulson said with a cross with both hands. Levi's mouth twitched slightly when he saw this. Phil Coulson, you believe in Jesus, not God? Oh, it's the same, it's the same. Phil Coulson responded, smiling awkwardly. Is it okay to leave the rest to SHIELD? Definitely no problem. Phil Coulson patted his chest. If it was the case that the villa area had not been restored just now, it would be very difficult to cover up this matter. After all, such a big pit can be seen by even a fool. But now that there are no deep pits, it is better to cover up. Chapter 95 Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One Sudden Visit. Back to the Mutant Academy. The Phoenix power thing is over, although Professor X is still a little worried about what might happen to the Phoenix power in Levi's, but he doesn't care about it at all. Although the Phoenix has not completely surrendered, it is more difficult to use the power of the Phoenix, and the power of the Phoenix must be suppressed at all times. However, he believed that it would not be long before the power of the Phoenix could be completely surrendered. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. That night, Levi's just got ready to go to sleep after using the two abilities flexibility and vibration to get Lorna and Clarice. Unexpectedly, a figure suddenly appeared in the room. Who? Levi's shouted loudly, and a powerful telepathy instantly enveloped the person who came. However, what surprised him was that the mental power could not invade the brain of the incoming person. Who are you? Using ultra-high speed. He was still in bed one moment ago, and the next moment he was fully dressed and came to this figure, in front of him. After approaching, he was shocked to see the appearance of the person who came. Wearing a yellow shirt with a big bald head, the one who came to his room turned out to be Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. Are you, 39? Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Ancient One said with a faint smile. Levi's was shocked when he heard this. Did Ancient One also have telepathy? But he didn't seem to feel the invasion of spiritual power. Then Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, what is your purpose here? Not knowing the purpose of Ancient One's visit, he didn't bother to beat around the bush. Ancient One is very powerful and belongs to the level Godfather police officer in the Marvel Universe. What is level Godfather? The king of a group of gods, such as Norse mythology. Odin is the level Godfather policeman, and the threshold of strength is that he can easily destroy a planet. And how strong are the 5th level mutants? The Accelerator White Wing State of LV5 is nothing more than a power level policeman who sinks the Eurasian continent. With his current strength, he is still far from being a level Godfather, at least a level 6 mutant. Definitely, this is without using the Phoenix Force. So in the face of Ancient One, he didn't need to cover up at all, and he didn't find any maliciousness in Ancient One. Ancient One smiled faintly when he heard his words. You have acquired a power that was not originally yours. 35. Oh? And then? You're going to take it? Levi's asked back with his arms crossed. If Ancient One were to take away the power of the Phoenix, he would have to fight for anything. No, I don't have any thoughts about that power. Ancient One shook his head and said, what I want to say is that power is not easy to control, and it may go berserk at any time. 35. Hearing these words, Levi's finally understood. It turned out that Ancient One was worried that he would not be able to control this power, which would lead to the destruction of the world, so he came to see it. Sorcerer Supreme, don't worry, I can control this power. 35. Levi's waved his hand indifferently. That way I'm relieved. Ancient One smiled and nodded before disappearing into the room. Seeing that she left, Levi's could not help frowning. Did Ancient One really just come to see? This is really strange, and he doesn't bother to think about some who don't understand. Turning around, Lorna and Clarice didn't wake up. Maybe they were really tired. The only thing that makes him a little regretful is that the number of sign-ins today has been used up. Otherwise, if you sign into Ancient One, you don't know what ability you will get. However, when he thought of the strength of Ancient One, he immediately had no idea of signing in. The difference in strength between the two was too great, and the chances of failing to sign in were very high. Thinking of this, he didn't bother about this, and turned back to sleep with Lorna and Clarice in his arms. The next day, early in the morning, Nick Fury called to complain, and many people saw his battle with the Dark Phoenix before. Although the villain area was restored, but the impact of this event is not so easily erased, and after listening to him bala talking for a long time, Levi's is still not clear that this is taking credit. I am afraid there will be some tasks to him in the future. But it doesn't matter, the purpose of his joining SHIELD is to get to know more characters from the original work and sign in. It's also a good thing to have tasks for him. Hanging up the phone, He just turned around and didn't expect the little naughty to be by his side. Vice, why haven't I seen you all this time, as well as Clarice and Lorna? Are you? The little naughty bit his lower lip and asked with a hesitation on his face. It's because the X-Men have a mission recently. Levi's waved his hand. What about Clarice and Lorna? It always feels like their relationship is better. 35 Naughty asked. This because they've all become my women. Levi's thought about it and didn't bother to cover it up. He just said it directly and generously. His current attitude is that if the little naughty knows the news and is willing to join, he will join, and if he is not willing, forget it. Seeking flowers. He doesn't lack women anyway. It is so Buddhist. When the little naughty heard his words, he suddenly looked surprised. Although there were some speculations before, it was still a little unbelievable to hear him say such words in person. A woman with such a character as Lorna would like a man with others? What are you kidding? After the surprise, the little naughty complexion became complicated. Would you like to join yourself? That's a question. Originally, she liked Levi's very much, not to mention that after being rescued on the Statue of Liberty last time, she learned that he is the only person in the world who is not afraid of her ability. This made her think that Levi's was the one for her. But knowing that Lorna and Clarice were the first to be his women made her hesitation. Mary, think about it. When you think about it, tell me the result. Levi's turned around and left. Only the little mischievous complexion was left. Into a training room. Vice, this way. Wanda waved happily when she saw him coming in not far away. Levi's walked over with a smile. How is it? Your ability training is okay. Brother Vice, look. Quicksilver on the side was full of desire, and saw that he disappeared in place in an instant, and then ran back and forth from the speed test track. Ding ding ding. The test machine uploads the prompt. This time the test result is 12,240 km per hour, that is to say, this time Quicksilver's performance is Mach 10, which is equivalent to 10 times the speed of sound. Nice. Levi's praised with a thumbs up. At the age of 12 years, Quicksilver can run 10 times the speed of sound is very good. Brother Vice, can we take revenge? Quicksilver asked expectantly. Not only him, but also Wanda on the side stared straight at him. Levi's had a headache seeing this, and it seemed that the two were very persistent in hatred. Pietro, just running fast is not enough. You also need to learn how to defeat the enemy. Teacher Vanke has never taught you this, right? Levi's said, looking at Jean Grey who was beside him. When she came back that day, Jean Grey had already recovered. Now she is finally back to normal, and she can still use a part of the power of the Phoenix. Although it is only a part, it can also give her the strength of a 4th-level mutant. Chapter 96 Destroy New York in the blink of an eye, the Mutant Brotherhood surrenders. Jean Grey nodded after hearing his words. At the moment, they are only teaching them to control their own abilities, and have not taught them practical knowledge. You have also heard that the real battle is not so easy, and it is not enough to control your own ability. Experienced soldiers can easily find your flaws, so you still need to study hard, and you are not in a hurry for revenge. Levi's touched the heads of the two to persuade. I believe in you. Wanda temporarily gave up the idea of revenge under his persuasion. Although Quicksilver was a little unconvinced, he still held on to his desire to take revenge now. After visiting siblings Wanda and Quicksilver, Levi's was about to leave, but didn't expect a message from Mystique that Magneto wanted to see him. After thinking about it, he did not refuse. Evening. In Queens, New York. The 503 bar deep in the alley looks a little deserted, but when you enter it, you will find that it is very lively here, with dozens of people of all shapes and sizes cheering here. At this moment, the door of the bar was pushed open. An old man with a helmet and a cloak, a blue-skinned woman, and a man with a sloppy face with his hands in his trouser pockets walked in. Magneto is back. In the already lively bar, it became even more lively after seeing someone coming. That's right, the bar is full of Mutant Brotherhood guys, and they're all pretty excited to see Magneto come back. It can be seen that Magneto's control of his subordinates is indeed very good. Magneto glanced at the crowd, then raised his hand and pressed down on me. The entire bar suddenly fell silent. Hey, Magneto, why are you here? Is there something big going on? 5. Suddenly a red apparition flashed to Magneto's side and joked. This red phantom was the Red Devil, and among the mutants present, he was probably the only one who would joke with Magneto like this. At the same time, another figure that Levi's was very familiar with also walked over. White Queen. The last time the two fought, it was at the Statue of Liberty. At that time, he played the White Queen fiercely, and looking at the appearance of the 5 Cuckoo sisters in front of him, Levi's mouth couldn't help showing a smile. The White Queen also seemed to have noticed his smile, and immediately glared at him sharply. Immediately afterwards, familiar mutants came out, Sabretooth, Blob, Toad, and even Red Tank and Multiple Man. This surprised Levi's. With the current strength of the Mutant Brotherhood, the X-Men would be far inferior to him, but I don't know why only half of them were dispatched in the last plan. Mutant brothers, we have been fighting against ordinary people for so long, showing them the power of mutants. We are far better than ordinary people. The future should be controlled by mutants. Mutants people hail! 35. Magneto raised his hand and spoke impassively. When all the mutants in the bar heard this, they immediately became excited. Mutant hail. This is like a religious situation, which makes Levi's a little surprised. He didn't expect that Magneto brainwashed these mutants like this. At this moment, Magneto pressed his hands down slightly, and the whole bar became quiet again. Brothers, it's not just an idea to replace ordinary people, someone who can make it happen has appeared, and that's this. 99. Magneto said and pushed Levi's forward. He will be the leader of all mutants and lead them to a glorious day. These impassioned remarks made the mutants excited, but the White Queen and the Red Devil who were standing in front did not agree. They weren't like those brainwashed mutants who blindly followed Magneto's words. They joined the Mutant Brotherhood for different purposes, so to speak. If I remember correctly, the White Queen and the Red Devil later joined the Hellfire Club and became the leaders of the club. So they didn't care about the young man Levi's. Levi's was also a little surprised by Magneto's words, but he didn't expect him to elect himself as a leader of the Mutant Brotherhood. Although he didn't care about this position, since he was elected, he couldn't be too cowardly to be looked down upon. Introduce myself. My name is Levi's. Definitely you can also call me God. Levi's smiled and continued, as Magneto said, I will be the leader of all mutants in the future. Lead the mutants to rule the world. Hearing his words, many mutants present began to discuss for a while. They really don't believe that the young man in front of them can take the place of Magneto. People who join the Mutant Brotherhood are no good. Most of them used ability to hurt people so much that they joined the Mutant Brotherhood after they were desperate. Magneto's ability is obvious to all. They are definitely very convincing. But you, a young man who popped up out of nowhere, wanted to take Magneto's place as their leader. No one will obey this. Humphrey, just because you want to be the leader of the Mutant Brotherhood? The White Queen folded her arms in disdain. The Red Devil on the side was a little surprised to hear what she said, and asked in a low voice, what? You know him? Not only know each other, but also know each other very well. Would the White Queen try my methods again? Levi's took the initiative to answer his words with a smile on his face. Humphrey, don't think I'm afraid of you. The White Queen snorted disdainfully, but did not dare to act easily. She did not forget the scene of being hanged and beaten. It seems that everyone is very unconvinced of me, Levi said to Magneto next to him with a smile. Magneto shrugged and motioned for him to solve it himself. Okay then, let's let you know. Levi smiled and snapped his fingers. The next moment, the whole house shook, and the earth was torn apart in an instant, and the whole was afraid of being destroyed in an instant. However, it didn't stop there. I saw that the earth was shaking constantly, and the sky was full of dark clouds and lightning. This scene is like the end of the world, but in the blink of an eye. 4.1 Kung Fu. The entire New York was destroyed into ruins. The people of the Mutant Brotherhood wailed and climbed up from the ruins. When they stood on the ruins and looked at the whole of New York, everyone looked dull. They really could not have imagined that this young man in front of him was so powerful, but he destroyed the whole of New York in an instant. Who else is dissatisfied with me? In the sky, Levi's looked down at the mutants below with a calm expression. How could the stun mutants dare to be dissatisfied? And they all knelt down frantically. God, even Mystique, the Red Devil and the White Queen fell to their knees unconsciously. After all, the reality in front of him was really shocking. In the blink of an eye, it destroyed the whole of New York. How strong is this? Chapter 97 The Scientist Who Made Hate. Dr. Stern. Levi's nodded in satisfaction, then snapped his fingers. Boom. The sound of a broken mirror resounded in everyone's ears. The next moment, everyone found that they were still in the bar, and everything around them did not change in the slightest. This suddenly shocked everyone. Even Magneto couldn't help frowning. Is it an illusion? The White Queen reacted and guessed. After hearing his words, the Red Devil and Magneto and the others understood. It's an illusion, and it's not an illusion. Levi smiled lightly. What happened just now is just that he used the illusion technique to pull everyone here into an illusion. As for why it's not magic, that's because he simulated the scene based on his super ability. That is to say, if he really made a move, the whole of New York would be destroyed in an instant, like a fantasy. The White Queen, the Red Devil and the others seemed to understand what he meant, and they were astonished in their hearts. Are you a 5th level mutant? The White Queen's face was full of disbelief. As soon as these words came out, all the mutants present stared at him closely, waiting for his answer. If it's not a 5th level mutant, how dare you say that you are God? 22. Levi said with a faint smile. Hearing his words, the eyes of the mutants present became even hotter. After waving his hand to silence the mutants, Levi's folded his arms and looked at Magneto. Magneto, you brought me here, won't you just make me the leader of the mutants? Just a gesture silenced the mutants. Magneto sighed. It's really admirable that Levi's has done what he has worked so hard to do for a long time. Charles was right, he was a natural leader, the one who led the mutants to a bright future. Thinking of this, Magneto replied with a smile, I heard that there has been a shortage of scientific researchers in the laboratory, So this time I hired 2 scientists. Where did you find it? It's not kidnapping. Levi's looked at him strangely for a year, and instantly guessed his thoughts. It doesn't matter, it's just 2 ordinary people. 35. Magneto waved his hand indifferently. Okay then, take me to see. Levi's didn't care too much. If the 2 men were helpful to the research, they would stay, and if they didn't, just let them go. As for whether the other party is willing to stay, he does not consider it. If you don't want to, the big deal is to control it first, and then let it go after the research is completed. Come with me. Magneto nodded. Then Mystique led the way, followed by a few others. At the same time, located in a cell below the bar, a middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes. This is where, seeing the unfamiliar environment, the middle-aged man suddenly stood up from the ground. At this moment, he found that there was an old man of about 50 years old in the room, and the old man was knocking on the door for help. Seeing that the middle-aged man woke up, the old man stopped knocking on the door. He came over and made a move to the middle-aged man. Roar. We were all arrested suddenly. How about getting to know each other? After the old man finished speaking, he began to introduce himself. My name is Houghton Radcliffe, and I am a scientist. The middle-aged man frowned and said, my name is Samuel Stern. There's online man was obviously still a little wary and didn't introduce too much. I see you as a scientist too. Luo. Although the other party didn't say it, Houghton Radcliffe guessed it. Samuel Stern didn't speak, but he was a little surprised. Since the other party chose to kidnap the 2 scientists, it is obvious that they are interested in our research results or knowledge. Dr. Radcliffe guessed. Dr. Stern thought for a while and said solemnly, there are many people who want my research results, and there are people in my research room who are closely guarded, but they are still arrested. It seems that these people are very difficult. At this time, Dr. Radcliffe suddenly felt that his name was a little familiar, and he suddenly exclaimed, Samuel Stern? Are you Dr. Stern, the one who created the abomination for the military? Didn't think I was so famous. Dr. Stern was a little surprised, and then he said angrily, it's all because General Ross is too greedy. If it wasn't for him to let me inject Hulk's blood into that person, there is no hatred at all in the body. You know what? I almost died in the lab. Dr. Stern's anger was justified. It was General Ross who forced him to create an abomination that nearly killed him. Don't get excited. I completely understand your thoughts, but if I can get the Hulk's blood, I will use it for experiments without hesitation. 35. Dr. Radcliffe waved his hand. As a scientist, no one can refuse Hulk's blood. I'm getting out of here, Dr. Stern said as he came to the door. If you can't get out, this door is not an electronic lock, and even an electronic lock cannot be opened from the inside. 33. Dr. Radcliffe shook his head and said. However, Dr. Stern ignored his words and saw that he directly used his shoulder to hit the iron gate. Boom. From the dull voice, you could tell how powerful the blow was. I saw that the whole iron gate was a little sunken. Dr. Radcliffe behind him widened his eyes. Are you really a scientist? 35. However, Dr. Stern did not answer his 503 meaning, and saw that he bumped several times in a row, and the iron gate was knocked out instantly. Who stipulated that scientists should not be able to have more ability? At this time, Dr. Stern replied and asked rhetorically, is this really just bigger? Dr. Radcliffe was powerless to complain. I'm getting out of here. 35. Dr. Stern gave him a look and walked out of the room. However, at this moment, 3 people stood at the door. Levi's looked at the people who were knocked out, and said with a look of surprise, this is the scientist you found? It doesn't look like it. Scientists can knock down such thick iron doors. Who can do it except Dr. Banner? Maybe he's just a little more powerful, Mystique explained. All right. Levi's didn't bother with the question. He looked at the 2 people in the room, then said to Mystique, can you tell me? No problem. Mystique nodded, then pointed at the middle-aged man and introduced, this is Dr. Samuel Stern. I think you should have heard of his name, who was slapped on the streets of New York not long ago. It is from his hands. Oh. That's a talent. Levi's nodded. He had heard of Dr. Stern's name. It was said that he and Dr. Banner were still friends. Chapter 98. Magneto's Appreciation. This is Dr. Houghton Radcliffe. I don't know what he studied, but he snatched it from SHIELD. Mystique introduced. Dr. Radcliffe. Levi's touched his chin, and seemed to have heard the name before. You should all be mutants, Dr. Radcliffe said, staring at Mystique with interest. He had never seen someone with blue skin and so many patterns, so he was very sure that the people who kidnapped him were a group of mutants. Yes, Dr. Radcliffe. Do you have anything to say? Levi said with a smile. Sure enough, Dr. Radcliffe said excitedly, I have imagined many ways of human evolution, such as I accidentally created the original Inhumans, but they are not perfect. 99. Actually, what I want to study most is mutants. After all, mutants are naturally mutated by humans. No. They are more inclined to evolve. Dr. Radcliffe became incoherent as he spoke, and it was obvious that he was very excited. When Levi's heard him say that the original Inhuman was created, he knew who the scientist in front of him was. Alvus, also known as the Hive, are parasitic Inhumans capable of infecting and occupying corpses. After returning to Earth, The Hive created a mysterious organization that evolved over the centuries to become the Hydra. In order to form an alien army to conquer the Earth, the Hive prepared to use the blood of the Kree for experiments. And Dr. Radcliffe was the scientist who was kidnapped by them. Simply put, it was Hydra who kidnapped Dr. Radcliffe. But with the demise of Hydra, Radcliffe was taken over by SHIELD. Levi's didn't expect Magneto to find him. You kidnapped me is really a very correct decision. What do you want me to do? I have extremely high attainments in biology, electronics, artificial intelligence, etc. As long as you let me study mutants, I can promise you anything. Dr. Radcliffe said with a frenzy. It can be seen that this guy is a mad scientist, and he can ignore anything when he is interested in research. Levi's was very satisfied with this. We invited you over this time to study how to make ordinary people evolve into mutants. I very much agree with what you just said. Mutants are new human beings, and they are the way of human evolution. 2:35. Because the X gene exists in every ordinary person, I believe that Dr. Radcliffe will be interested in this research. I'm interested. I'm so interested. I can't wait to start my research, Dr. Radcliffe said eagerly. Levi's telepathically knew he wasn't lying. It can be said that Dr. Radcliffe is an extreme human evolutionist, who has always been in the field of human evolution research and is very persistent in human evolution. That's why he's so ecstatic. Very well. Dr. Radcliffe welcomes you, and if you need anything, you can tell us. And then, saying that, Levi's looked at Dr. Samuel Stern, who was on the side. What about you, Dr. Stern? Are you interested in participating in this research? I'm not interested in your research, I just want to go home and see my family now. 35. Dr. Stern walked up to him and said seriously, I want to see your family, definitely no problem. Levi's nodded, then looked at Mystique. Dr. Stern, we have invited your family over, you can see it anytime if you want to see it. Mystique said with a smile. What? How dare you kidnap my family? Dr. Stern was furious when he heard the words, and saw that his whole body muscles swelled in a circle, and then he grabbed Levi's with a big hand, obviously wanting to take him as a hostage. However, this decision was simply too stupid. Levi's mind moved, and he used telepathy to control him. What happened? Dr. Stern suddenly found that his body could not move, and he immediately showed a look of horror. If Dr. Stern guessed right, Hulk's blood already exists in your body. Levi's smiled with his arms crossed. It was just an accident. If it wasn't for the Hulk's blood getting into my body, I would have been dead. 35. Dr. Stern explained with some excitement. Levi's knew that was the case. On the night of Abomination's appearance, Dr. Stern was slapped by Abomination. But fortunately he did not die. It was just a head injury, but Hulk's serum just happened to drip onto his wound. It is precisely because of this that he has a physique far beyond ordinary people. The military won't believe you, so you've been imprisoned before. If that's the case, why don't you join me as a mutant? The last thing we don't discriminate against is monsters, and your family has already been rescued by us. Hearing this, Dr. Stern thought for a while, and it seemed that this was the case. He had already been released from the military prison, and he even came out with his family. Rather than continue to be imprisoned by the military, it seems that joining mutants is not unacceptable. Thinking of this, Dr. Stern nodded. Okay, I promise to join, but you must keep my family safe. Don't worry about this, it's totally fine. 99. Levi's nodded with a smile. Leave the room, and Mystique will take care of it later. In the bar, clap clap clap. Magneto couldn't help but clapped. You really are a natural leader and you have done a very beautiful job. The performance of Levi's just now was really wonderful. It was just a few words and he managed to gather these two top scientists without any effort. Even he may not be able to do it so well, and in the end, I am afraid that the White Queen will have to use telepathy to control it. But being able to not use telepathic control is the best. It's just taking advantage of their weakness. Lee's good, held up the red wine glass and smiled lightly. He was just fooling around. If not, he had to use telepathic control. But no matter what, this time they have harvested two top scientists, and their experimental plans must be able to produce results faster. Speaking of which, there are indeed many top scientists in the Marvel Universe, but what he cared about most was Zhao Hailan, besides Tony. It can be said that Zhao Hailan is definitely a top scientist who is not inferior to Tony. She once said to Tony, your old-fashioned and bulky mechanical suit is going to be laid off, and the future is nanotechnology. Tony very much agrees with that. As predicted in the subsequent Avengers 3, Tony's steel armor uses nanotechnology. And Ultron was also interested in Zhao Hailan's talent, so he used the mind gem to control her and let her use the regeneration cradle to create a new body for him. Hence the creation of superhero vision. Chapter 99. Get a Hammer? Ancient One's Commission. Thinking of this, Leviston was moved. Maybe he could pull this young beautiful scientist into the camp of mutants. Definitely. Now he doesn't even know where Dr. Zhao Hailan is, let alone fooling around. He remembered that Tony seemed to be in touch with this Dr. Hailan Zhao, and he asked him when he met him that day. But what he has to do now is not to contact Tony, but to prepare for today's check-in. There are quite a few mutants in the bar, but the ones that concern him the most are the Multiple Man and the Red Devil. Needless to say, the teleportation of the Red Devil, Levi's already has the space to move, and if he signs in, he will likely give double experience. The Multiple Man, on the other hand, is able to create its own duplication. After thinking about it, he decided to sign into Multiple Man first. If you have double experience, don't worry. Ding. Did the host check into the mutant Multiple Man? Yes. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability duplication, with 100 experience points. Sure enough, he obtained the ability duplication, and his duplication can obtain 50% of the power of the body, and all abilities can be used. This is quite against the sky. With his current LV5 strength, even 50% can easily hang an LV4 mutant. Definitely, Levi's is not looking at the combat power of this ability 503, but is looking at things that can handle multiple places at the same time. Although he is more relaxed now, he will always be busy in the future. At that time, it would be better to have duplication to handle file size transactions. Just got back to the Mutant Academy when Nick Fury called. Levi's knew that the last time SHIELD wiped his ass, he would definitely be assigned a task. After all, SHIELD's resources are not that easy to use. Hey, Director Nick Fury, what's the mission? Nick Fury on the other end of the phone was visibly choked. You're right, I do have a task for you. Tell me, while I'm in a good mood, Levi's asked leisurely, sitting in the shade of the school playground. It's like this. 5. After some explanation from Nick Fury, Levi's finally understood what had happened. It turns out that Nick Fury sent Phil Coulson the other day to investigate a meteorite fall in New Mexico. However, when Phil Coulson went, it was not a meteorite that fell, but a hammer. That's right, it's a hammer. Originally, this kind of thing was very bizarre, but what was even more bizarre was that no matter what method they used, the hammer could not move at all. It's like taking root. Nick Fury learned that the hammer might have been dropped by aliens, so to be on the safe side, and to try to get the hammer back. Then I contacted Levi's and wanted to let him run Thor's hammer plus Thor. I don't know what ability I can sign up for. Levi's muttered softly. Hey, Vice, how's it going? It's okay for you to have this task? Nick Fury on the 35 phone line was a little anxious when he saw that he didn't speak. Definitely no problem. Leave this task to me. I'll take a trip tomorrow. Levi's agreed without much hesitation. On the other side, Nick Fury was finally relieved when he saw that he agreed. The alien hammer, the SHIELD also want to study it very much, but they have been suffering from not being able to transport it back. Definitely, it's a matter of course if you can't pick it up. After all, it was Mjolnir, made from the core material of a neutron star, and its weight was comparable to that of a small planet. How can ordinary people handle this situation? However, it is not impossible for ordinary people to pick it up, that is, to obtain Mjolnir's approval. As long as you get Mjolnir's approval, you can not only pick up Mjolnir, but also use the power of Thor. It was getting late after hanging up the phone. Levi stretched his waist to prepare, to go back to rest, but when he reached the door, he didn't expect to be pulled away by the little naughty. Since becoming an X-Men alternate, she has also had her own room. Vice, only you can be in close contact with me in this world, so we are destined to be a couple. Promise me that you will love me forever? That's definitely. I'll never let you leave me. I love you. Levi's assured very seriously. He's not like Tony who can pass a leaf in 1,000 flowers without touching his body. If he passes by the flowers, he picks them all if he likes them. When Xiao Naughty heard his words, he was immediately moved, and he didn't even think about it. The next day, Levi's had planned to use the space move to go directly to New Mexico, but Nick Fury asked him to take Melinda with him. Said Melinda would lead him to Phil Coulson. Levi's didn't want to be so troublesome, but when the little naughty heard that he was going to New Mexico, he immediately planned to go with him, and regarded it as a honeymoon. After thinking about it, he was not in a hurry anyway, and simply agreed. But before he left, he met an unexpected person. Sorcerer Supreme, why are you here again? Levi's looked at the Ancient One in front of him in surprise, wondering what the purpose of her coming to him was. Son, it seems that you are a little dissatisfied with me. Ancient One smiled faintly. I'm not dissatisfied, but I always feel like you're not doing anything good to me. 35 Levi's doesn't talk around the corners. Just say whatever comes to his mind. Ancient One didn't get angry when he heard his words. I do have one thing I want to ask of you. When Levi's heard the words, he secretly thought that sure enough, he knew that Ancient One had nothing to do with him. Then talk about it first. I have something very important to be away for a while, so I want to clear up some troubles before that. 35. Having said this, Ancient One paused, then looked at him and said, you should be going to New Mexico soon, so I hope you can help me bring back a magic item. Magic item? What magic item? Levi's asked curiously. That magical item is called the Saint Van Gonzalian contract. Contract of Saint Van Gonzalo? Levi's rubbed his chin and thought about it, but he couldn't remember where he had heard of this thing. So where is this thing? Ancient One shook his head. I don't know where that thing is, but I can leave a special magic on you, and that thing will naturally find you at that time. Chapter 100 The Contract of Saint Van Gonzalo, Ghost Rider Strikes. Oh. Well. So what can I get? Levi's looked at her with interest. He wouldn't make a loss-making business. Ancient One seemed to be ready for a long time, and when he saw this, he immediately replied, I can teach you magical knowledge, and even the position of Sorcerer Supreme can be handed over to you. Levi's was stunned for a moment when he heard this. He didn't expect Ancient One to be so willing to give him the position of Sorcerer Supreme. But he didn't want to be a Sorcerer Supreme. Forget about Sorcerer Supreme, I'm not interested. By the way, I can also learn magic. Definitely, anyone can learn magic. Ancient One nodded lightly. Well, my request is to be able to enter and leave the magic Holy Land freely, and to learn magic at will. How about it? Can this request be granted? He can't be bothered to learn about magic. Isn't it delicious to use his many super abilities now? What's more, he has the power of the Phoenix. His purpose couldn't be simpler, as Kamar-Taj, the holy place of magic, must be able to sign in, and there are so many magicians who can sign in too. That's a lot of experience. Maybe you can even sign in magic directly. Yes, I think your ability should be able to enter and leave Kamar-Taj freely, and then I will inform the magicians of Kamar-Taj about this. Ancient One agreed without thinking much. Okay, that's it. Levi's nodded with satisfaction. Ancient One smiled and nodded, then opened the portal. Hey, you haven't left a magic mark on me yet? 39. Before he finished speaking, Ancient One disappeared into the portal. Could it have left a magical mark on me? Levi's touched his chin and felt his body carefully. The powerful telepathy carefully scanned every position of himself, and he really found a strange energy on his back. This is magic? It's really magical. What surprised him was that he didn't find out when Ancient One did it just now. As expected of the Sorcerer Supreme, his strength is indeed terrifying. Huh? Where did you go, Vice? Didn't find you after searching for a long time? At this time, the little naughty came to him and asked suspiciously. Oh. Just went out to answer a call. Let's go. Levi's made a random excuse. The little naughty didn't care about it either. On the highway to New Mexico, a bright black car was driving at high speed. In the back seat, Levi's was bored lying on the little naughty lap and closed his eyes. Time without a smartphone is really boring. You can't watch videos, and you can't play mobile games. God knows why Tony has such advanced virtual projection technology. Why is the mobile phone still a semi-intelligent machine? Maybe he should find a chance to discuss this fortune with Tony. Hey, Melinda agent, how long will it take to arrive? Levi's opened his eyes boredly. Almost. Melinda replied lightly, when the speed of the car suddenly stopped. Huh? Are you here? Levi's sat up on his naughty lap as a child. It doesn't seem to have arrived. The little naughty looked out the window, but she didn't feel bored. Don't you feel hungry? There happens to be a convenience store here. I'll go buy something. Melinda got out of the car after she finished speaking. Thank you, you don't have to buy ours. Levi's shouted, and then said to the little naughty, what would you like to eat, Mary? Cheeseburger, pizza, dinner. When he was bored, he seemed to be talkative, but going back and forth to New York was only a momentary thing. It's all right. Little naughty is not picky about food at all. He is completely in charge. However, at this moment, gunshots suddenly came from the convenience store. Bang bang bang. A robber in a convenience store? Levi's looked at the convenience store in surprise. Let's go down and have a look. The little naughty was a little worried about Melinda. Well then, the dinner thing will be settled later. 35. Levi's was not so worried about Melinda. After all, Melinda was a very powerful agent, and it was no problem to deal with mere robbers. The two got out of the car and went to the convenience store. Flowers. Sure enough, there were already 3 middle-aged men who fell to the ground and wailed, while Melinda stood by with her expression unchanged. Nice job. Levi's smiled with his arms crossed. Melinda looked at the panicked clerk and said, call the police to deal with it. After she finished speaking, she walked outside the convenience store with the things she had already paid for. Levi's and little naughty followed suit. Just as they were about to get in the car and leave, they didn't expect a man in a black jacket riding a motorcycle to stand in front of them. Melinda frowned. Are you an accomplice of those robbers? 35. The man in the jacket did not answer, but looked at Levi's and said in a hoarse voice, .0. I feel the incomparably evil aura on you. This evil must be completely purified, so my judgment on you is, you are guilty. Oh? Levi's was not angry when he heard this, but rather curious. There is a strange power in this man in front of him, but I don't know who the other party is. Judgment. The Gark man suddenly roared hoarsely. Immediately afterwards, flames burned rapidly on his body. The amazing thing was that these flames did not burn his clothes. Instead, the flesh and blood of his whole body disappeared, turning into a skeleton burning with flames. Ghost Rider? Levi's looked a little surprised at the flaming skeleton in front of him. He had heard about Ghost Rider before, but he didn't expect to encounter it just after arriving in New Mexico. This is definitely not a coincidence. Wait, the Saint Van Gonzalo Covenant. It suddenly occurred to him that what the Ancient One needed was the contract in Ghost Rider. It turns out that the magic that Ancient One put on him is to attract Ghost Rider. To understand all this, the corners of Levi's mouth twitched slightly. To get the contract, It seems that he still needs to use the Ghost Rider in front of him. Boom tilde boom. Ghost Rider didn't say much nonsense. He directly rode on the motorcycle that had been attached to Hellfire and rushed over, and the chain attached to Hellfire in his hand swung a whip and slammed it. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. And join my Patreon if you want to support me, link is in the description. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.